Chapter 21. Ryan, who was fascinated by the book, suddenly felt a shaking, and then the entire station seemed to be slowly moving backwards. 11 o'clock came and the Hogwarts Express set off. Hermione also put down the book in her hand and looked out the window. She was about to enter the magical world. Ryan, what do you think the Hogwarts entrance ceremony will be like? Hermione held her chin and looked out the window in concentration. I don't know, but I won't let you go back anyway. Ryan was not interested in this topic. Knowing the original work, he had no emotional fluctuations in what was destined to happen. However, he also followed the tradition of concealing the sorting ceremony from newly admitted young wizards, and did not reveal any information to Hermione. Hermione sighed and said worriedly, "Of course I know that Hogwarts will not let young wizards refuse to enroll. I am worried about how they will use it to identify the colleges we need to go to." Before Ryan could speak, he heard Hermione continue, "I just heard some young wizards say that we need to face a fire dragon alone, and some said it was a female ghost, and all kinds of mess." Hermione scratched her head irritably, and her already fluffy hair became even more fluffy. Ryan couldn't help laughing when he saw the little girl whining. "What? Am I funny?" Hermione raised her eyebrows and stared at Ryan with her eyes wide open. Ryan stopped laughing after laughing twice and replied, "Hermione, you are just a little wizard. There is no way you can deal with fire dragons and female ghosts. Most little wizards don't even know a single spell now, and the school won't let them. You go and deal with those powerful monsters. How do you know that none of the new students have mastered spells? Maybe those wizarding families use this method to suppress wizards like us from the Muggle world." Hermione said to herself, getting more and more confused as she talked. With great confidence, Hermione felt that she had come into contact with the truth about the wizarding world. "By the way, where's Pace? I just flew out and I don't know where I went." Hermione spread her hands and said helplessly. Ryan opened the book in his hand and replied casually, "Don't worry about it, he will be back at dinner time." But a sound interrupted his movements. "Well, I'm sorry. Is there any room here? Other places are full." A chubby little wizard stood at the door and said timidly. His face was round and he was holding a toad in his hand. Hermione obviously saw the toad in his hand and looked a little disgusted. Ryan stared at Neville for a long time, which made Neville a little embarrassed. When he wanted to speak and look for a seat again, Ryan spoke. "You can sit here, but you have to watch your toad." After Ryan finished speaking, he turned his attention to the book in his hand. Hermione looked at the toad in Neville's hand, thought for a moment, picked up the book in her hand and moved to Ryan's side, giving up the seat on one side. "Thank you, really thank you." After Neville stammered, he began to move things into the compartment. Neville had a lot of things, 3 or 4 boxes, each of which was a large suitcase. However, these large filled boxes were still too heavy for an 11-year-old wizard, so Neville could only drag the boxes in. The sound of the box being dragged on the ground penetrated Ryan's ears, making him frown. Looking at Neville who was struggling to carry his luggage, Ryan lifted it casually, and the boxes in Neville's hands and the boxes placed in the corridor floated, and then flew to the luggage rack in the compartment one after another. Neville stared blankly at his empty hands, feeling a little weird. Neville, who grew up in a magic family, had never seen anyone cast a levitating spell so easily, but the little wizard in front of him, who looked about the same size as him, did it. Neville suddenly felt that he had caused a big trouble for him by coming here, but now that the luggage had been put away, it would be too deliberate to take it down again. In the end, Neville sat down hesitantly. The 2 little wizards in front of them were looking at the books in their hands attentively, which made Neville feel a little on pins and needles. After all, even though Ryan was so powerful, he was still reading. Several times Neville opened his mouth, but eventually closed it again. The atmosphere created by the 2 young wizards in front of him made it impossible for him to get in at all, so Neville could only touch the leaf in his hand. "Sorry for ignoring you." A voice woke up Neville who was in a daze. He subconsciously touched leaf in his hand, but found that the toad that was supposed to be in his hand had now disappeared. "Wait, where's my leaf?" Neville shouted as he stood up. He looked around, trying to find any trace of leaf, but obviously there was none to be found. "Leaf, is that the toad?" Hermione closed the book in her hand and asked doubtfully. Neville was a little anxious, and while lying on the ground searching for any trace of leaf under the seat, he replied, "Yes, it was given to me by my uncle when I was 8 years old." Ryan was so disturbed by Neville's actions that he couldn't read any more. Fortunately, he closed the book and looked around to help him find it. Is that what's outside the door? Ryan said, pointing to the glass on the door. Neville stood up hurriedly, bumped his head, and looked in the direction Ryan pointed. Leave! Neville cried out in surprise. He opened the door, ran out and picked up the toad as if it were a treasure. When Hermione saw it, her whole face twisted into disgust. Ryan was a little curious about this toad. He Ryaned his head on the seat and asked curiously, "Does this toad always disappear so suddenly?" Neville obviously didn't expect that the little wizard opposite would talk to him. He was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted and stammered, it's just that my memory is not very good. Sometimes I'm always in a daze. It must be. Lifu is bored. I always start to be in a daze involuntarily. He just goes out to play alone." As he said this, Neville did not forget to touch Leaf twice. Hermione saw Neville's actions and her body stiffened for a moment, with a polite smile on her face. "I heard that wizards use toads to test medicines. Is it true?" Ryan asked with interest. However, his laid-back look and Neville's nervousness that he didn't even dare to bend at the waist made it seem like Ryan was a villain, and Neville was the one being bullied. "No. That's right," Neville said with some fear. He seemed to realize something and squeezed Leaf tightly. Leaf was a little uncomfortable being pinched by the sudden force, and he let out a cry, and his eyes were pinched and bulged outwards. "This is it." Ryan took out a bottle of blue-purple potion from the small pocket on the inside of his coat that was specially used to store potions. The weird potion gave off a strange smell under the sunlight. Neville held Leaf tightly in his arms and shouted, "No, no." If there was a little wizard walking by outside at this time, he would definitely suspect that something bad was happening inside the carriage. "What kind of potion is this? I have never read about it in the book Magic Potions and Potions. Hermione glanced at the potion in Ryan's hand curiously. The human language potion can make animals speak human words. It is a very magical potion, but the specific efficacy still needs to be tested. Ryan shook the potion in his hand and said to Neville, "How is it? Do you want to try it?" Neville shook his head and held Leaf tighter. "It doesn't matter, toads are already very resistant to the poison of the potion, and the potion itself is a success, but its specific properties still need to be tested." Ryan said thoughtfully, "And don't you want to hear what Leaf has to say?" Neville was slightly moved, which made Ryan curl up his lips involuntarily, but what Ryan didn't know was that Hermione quietly moved aside. "Perhaps you can ask Leaf why he always stays away from you. This is a good opportunity. You must know that this kind of formula is not common. If you miss it this time, there will be no next time." Neville was finally persuaded by Ryan. He held Leaf in his hands and said timidly, "You can only feed a little, not too much." Ryan nodded happily in agreement, then uncorked the potion bottle, opened Leaf's mouth and fed the entire bottle of potion. "Hey, what are you doing?" Seeing Ryan's actions, Neville hurriedly covered Leaf in his arms again, and then glared at Ryan. "Ahem, let me go quickly, I'm about to be strangled to death by you, little fat man." A hoarse voice sounded in the carriage. Hermione looked at the toad in Neville's arms in surprise, raised her finger tremblingly and pointed at it and said, It spoke. What a rude little girl. How can you use it? You should use him." Lifu continued, "Hurry up and let me go, little fat man. Mr. Lifu is going to be squeezed to death by you." "Leaf, you're okay. That's great." Neville realized that it was Leaf in his arms who was speaking, and he immediately held Leaf in the palm of his hand and brought it to his eyes. "Are you feeling uncomfortable now?" Ryan took out a pen and paper from the box at some point and asked Leaf with a curious look on his face. Hermione looked at Ryan in disbelief and said, "You look like the evil scientist in the movies and TV shows. Everything is for a better tomorrow." Ryan replied seriously. Leaf jumped from Neville's palm to the seat, cleared his throat and said, "There's nothing strange about it, but my throat is a little uncomfortable." Chapter 22. "Do you feel uncomfortable?" Ryan said doubtfully. "Yeah, it's just a little uncomfortable." Only then did Ryan notice that Leaf only opened his mouth, but the small bubbles did not inflate. It was obvious that the medicine had modified Leaf's body structure. "Well, this is something worth noting. Write it down quickly." Ryan muttered to himself, then picked up the pen and started writing something down in the notebook. Hermione shrugged helplessly, while Neville looked at Leaf with worry. "Do you have any other feelings?" Ryan asked excitedly. Besides. Gugwa. Before Leaf could finish his words, he turned into a toad again. Neville carefully took Leaf into his hands and continued stroking him. It seems that the duration is too short. The concentration can be increased appropriately next time. After finishing writing, Ryan put away the notebook. Oops, I forgot to ask Leaf why he always leaves me. Suddenly, Neville yelled, and then his whole person became depressed. Hermione folded her hands on her chest, glanced sideways at Ryan, and then pursed her lips in Neville's direction, meaning that you should solve the problems you caused. Well, Neville, don't be sad, I'll just make you a bottle later. Ryan thought for a long time, but he didn't seem to have any experience in comforting others, so he could only say this in the end. However, Neville was obviously not comforted and was still so depressed. Hermione pursed her lips, obviously suppressing a smile. Ryan has always shown himself to be omniscient and omnipotent, and rarely sees Ryan at a disadvantage, so Hermione watched with relish. Okay. Ryan was a little numb and didn't know what to do to save this damn atmosphere. By the way, it's almost time for lunch. I've prepared a lot of good things for today's lunch. Ryan had an idea and quickly said, nothing can bring people closer together than the dinner table. Then, Ryan took out a table from his traceless stretch bag, which was just big enough to be placed in the middle of the seats. There was a large pot and an iron plate in the middle. Then, with a wave of Ryan's magic wand, countless ingredients flew out of his pockets and were neatly placed on the table and the horizontal board under the table. Ryan, these are all raw, how should you eat them? Hermione said, holding a fresh carrot and taking a bite. Don't worry, Hermione, there is still a little something left, it will be ready soon. As he said that, a stream of milky white water flew from the pocket into the pot, and then boiled in about 3 seconds. The iron plate also began to shrink to both sides, revealing the tongues of flame below. Hot pot and barbecue. Oh my gosh, I didn't expect to be able to eat these on the train. Hermione exclaimed, covering her mouth. Neville was very confused and asked with a puzzled look on his face, what is this? I mean, how should I eat it? Like this, Hermione said, then poured a plate of mutton into the scalding boiling water, then fished it out with a slotted spoon. Maybe you need some sauce. Ryan handed over a lot of sauce at the right time. Hermione raised her eyebrows, glanced at Ryan with satisfaction, and then happily went to mix her favorite sauce. Seeing Hermione happily mixing her favorite sauce, Ryan also began to mix it according to his own taste. Neville, let's eat together. I have prepared a lot of ingredients, enough for us to eat. Seeing that Neville didn't make a move, Ryan urged. No need, my grandma prepared lunch for me. Neville took out a yellow lunch box from the box. When he opened it, there were some fried chicken nuggets and grilled fish inside. Maybe we can try it instead. Ryan said as he took a piece of chicken nugget from Neville's lunch box and put it into his mouth. It tastes really good, Neville, why don't you try our lunch too? Okay then. Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, Neville is indeed a bit difficult to deal with now. After coming back to his senses, Ryan suddenly found that there was some more scalded meat in his bowl. He turned around and saw that Hermione was raising an eyebrow at him. Ryan smiled knowingly, dipped the dipping sauce into his mouth. Tisk, it tastes better than the fried chicken just now. The three of them were eating like this while talking about the situation at home. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the carriage door, and through the glass on the door, Ryan could see a salesperson selling snacks outside. Would you like any snacks, kids? Your meal looks good, but some pumpkin juice would be a good choice. And chocolate frogs, that would be a nice after-dinner dessert. BB's braised beans, if you want to travel it's a bit of fun, don't miss this. Obviously, anyone who can be a salesperson has good eloquence. Everything in your car, ma'am, I want it all. Ryan took out 5 galleons and handed them to the salesperson. Suddenly, Ryan felt someone tugging on his clothes, and turned around to find that it was Hermione. Hermione, have you forgotten? I'm not short of money. After seeing Hermione's look, Ryan understood what Hermione wanted to say. At this time, Hermione also thought that Ryan had a considerable amount of treasure, and couldn't help but feel sad for her poverty. She immediately snorted and turned her head away from looking at Ryan. Okay, these are all yours, kid. By the way, a total of 2 galleons and 11 cents is enough. These are the change. The salesperson was in a good mood, and before leaving, he looked at Ryan and asked her. Min pursed her lips. Ryan placed these snacks on the seat and continued to eat lunch. Cuckoo! Paige landed right at the window and screamed while looking at the steaming hot pot. Hey Paige, come here! Hearing Ryan's call, Paige was greedy for the meat in the pot, but he still obeyed and flew to Ryan's shoulder. Look, do you want to try the new snacks I bought? Ryan opened a box of BB multi-flavor beans in his hand, then pinched a red bean and said. Paige was a little wary of Ryan's sudden courtesy and shook his head. Ryan, Paige is not stupid. Hermione smoothed Paige's hair, and Paige's eyes narrowed in comfort. TCH. Ryan shook his shoulders, shook Paige down, and then threw the all-flavored bean into his mouth. Well, it's strawberry flavor, sour and sweet, I like it. Ryan smacked his lips and said. Then let me try it too. Hermione took out a bean from the multi-flavored bean box in Ryan's hand and threw it into her mouth. Apple flavor, not bad. Hermione raised her head and said. Then, the two of them looked at Neville with puzzled faces, which made Neville nervous and asked, Is there anything, is something wrong? It's your turn, Neville. Ryan handed the box in his hand to Neville's eyes. Neville looked at Ryan, then at Hermione, and finally picked up a bean and threw it into his mouth. Grass smell, this is my favorite smell, I like everything related to herbs. Neville said with a smile. Although Neville sometimes forgets things, his love and knowledge of herbalism cannot be faked. Okay, it's my turn again. Ryan said helplessly, by the way, are you full? If so, I will put away the table. It's a little inconvenient. Hermione and Neville nodded. They were children, so they couldn't eat much no matter how much they ate. Neville once again watched Ryan show off his skills, and asked with his mouth wide open, Ryan, I want to ask, which wizard family do you come from? No, I come from a muggle family and I'm an orphan. Ryan replied while packing his traceless stretch bag. Hermione was teasing Paige at this time. After hearing what Ryan said, she paused. Although she already knew Ryan's life experience, Hermione still felt a little unbearable when she heard Ryan say it so calmly. This is simply a miracle. I mean, ordinary little wizards can't do this. Neville exclaimed. What? Can't little wizards do this? I learned a lot of spells from Ryan, and they are quite interesting, Hermione said. Neville did not expect that this seemingly small little girl could also cast spells, and said with some frustration, even children from wizarding families cannot touch the wand before they are 11 years old. After getting the wand, the family also they don't teach us magic. They always say that we need to go to Hogwarts to get some basic education before they can teach us the magic passed down in our family. Ryan could feel Hermione breathing a sigh of relief. Seriously, if a little muggle wizard can cast magic, it would be great. If he can do it like you, he is simply a genius. Hermione was obviously very pleased with this sentence, which could be seen from the way she kept suppressing the movements of her mouth. By the way, Neville, have your family told you what the sorting ceremony will be like? Hermione asked the question she was most concerned about. After Neville heard this question, his face suddenly turned pale and he said tremblingly, My grandma told me that we need to go into the school's forbidden forest to hunt alone. It is a forbidden forest, and I heard that there are countless ferocious magical animals in it. But I'm fine no matter what, I just don't want to enter Slytherin. If I enter Slytherin, my grandma will definitely come to the principal's office and take me home. I would like to go to Gryffindor. Ravenclaw is not bad either, but I heard that Dumbledore graduated from Gryffindor. Hermione smoothed Paige's feathers again, which made Paige's eye made a comfortable gurgling sound. I don't care, any college is good. Ryan threw an unknown snack into his mouth and said. I suggest you don't go to Slytherin. There are always dark wizards there, and they are not very friendly to muggle-born wizards. After Neville saw Hermione playing with her owl, he also stroked his own lip, and then said. Chapter 23. Slytherin has produced dark wizards and characters like Merlin, Gryffindor has produced Dumbledore and characters like Sirius. After speaking, Ryan threw a BB multi-flavor bean into his mouth, and then spat it out with a look of pain on his face. Damn it, why does it taste so bitter? It should smell like liver or bile, Neville said. I don't want to eat this anymore, let's try something else. Ryan threw the box of BB's multi-flavor beans on the seat, and then rummaged through the pile of snacks to find the food he was interested in. You can try the chocolate frog. That one is delicious. That's my favorite. Neville touched the leaf in his hand and said naively. Ryan became interested and asked, "Did you eat it in front of Leaf?" "Of course, I wanted to give Leaf a leg before, but he didn't like to eat it." Neville stroked Leaf in his hand. But Leaf didn't appreciate it and began to shake his legs frantically, trying to jump out of Neville's hand, but Neville squeezed it tighter. Ryan and Hermione looked at each other, speechless for a moment. The two of them had already conceived a picture in their minds. Neville's mouth was covered with chocolate liquid, and then he was holding a chocolate frog in his hand. Its legs were still jumping, and then Neville stood in front of him. Lifu broke off a leg and handed it to Lifu for him to eat. Suddenly, both of them shivered and felt a chill in their hearts. There is nothing more heart-wrenching than killing a clam. The way Hermione looked at Neville changed. It was no longer the way she looked at the silly fat man. Ryan also didn't expect that Neville, a silly-looking young man, would have a black cut. Did I say something wrong?" Neville asked cautiously, seeing the two young wizards staring at him strangely. "No, not really," Reen said reluctantly, then opened the book and started reading. Hermione kept asking Neville about the wizarding family. But after a while, Hermione stopped asking Neville questions, seemed tired, and began to calm down and read a book. After reading about 10 pages, Ryan felt a sudden hit on his shoulder. He took a look and found that Hermione had fallen asleep while reading. With a click of his fingers, a blanket came out of the box and was gently draped around Hermione's body. Neville didn't know where he went, probably to find his leaf. After moving his body so that Hermione could Ryan more comfortably, Ryan continued to read the book in his hand. Time passed quietly, and the train had been running on the tracks for about 5 hours. The setting sun shines on a lake, rippling countless golden lights. "Ryan!" Hermione opened her eyes drowsily and saw the little wizard Ryaning on her head. "Are you awake?" "Sorry, I fell asleep too," Ryan said as he was awakened by Hermione's movements. Hermione suddenly realized that she had fallen asleep on Ryan's shoulder, and Ryan had also fallen asleep on her head. The little girl's face instantly turned red. She covered her face and sat in the corner, covering her face with a large book. Ryan smiled, then smoothed out the creases on the book, closed the book and pressed it. The blanket covering Hermione next to her also began to fold itself, and then ran into the box by itself. "Hey, you guys woke up!" Neville walked in from outside and said in surprise. However, his mood soon dropped again, and he said dejectedly, "Can you please help me find Leaf? It's gone again. It's always like this. It likes to play hide and seek with me. I've been looking for it all afternoon. But none were found." Ryan sighed silently. He really didn't want to tell Neville the real situation. "I think it's good," Hermione said, closing the book covering her face. She was trying to get out for some air and wait for the atmosphere in the carriage to calm down before coming back in. At this moment, Ryan's teasing eyes made her feel uncomfortable. "No need." After saying that, Ryan took out his magic wand and waved, "Fly here, Leaf." A toad flew from a distance, and then slapped on the glass of the compartment door with a snap sound. "Lifu!" Neville cried out in surprise, then opened the compartment door, bent down and held him in his hands. For the first time, Hermione hated magic so much that her silver teeth almost broke. "I don't think you can escape." Ryan reined close to Hermione's ear and breathed softly. The airflow passed by the tip of Hermione's ear, causing Hermione's ears to become immediately congested and turned red. "Ugh!" Hermione screamed, then closed her eyes and raised her palms. Bang! A clear voice sounded, and a clearly visible slap mark appeared on Ryan's face. Ryan felt pain instantly, covered his face and fell on the seat. "Are you okay, Ryan? I'm really sorry, but you shouldn't just get involved like this." Seeing Ryan lying on the seat, Hermione panicked a little, shook Ryan's body and asked. Ryan shook his head and moved his hand away, a red slap mark clearly visible on his face. "Thank you, Ryan, if it weren't for you, what would have happened to you?" Neville turned around with Leaf in his arms and asked curiously when he saw the red handprints on Ryan's face. He just turned around and picked up his Leaf. Why was Ryan beaten? Neville thought for a long time. "Okay, let's not talk about this matter anymore. I think we have to put on our school uniforms. Judging from the sky outside, it should be here soon." Ryan brushed his face with his hand, and the handprint disappeared. Neville nodded blankly, while Hermione was a little shy. "Ladies first." Ryan stood up, gave Hermione a gentleman's salute, then glanced at Neville and walked out first. Neville was a little strangely stared at by him, and then he reacted instantly and followed Ryan out with a blushing face. After Ryan saw Neville also coming out, he knocked on the glass window on the compartment door. The originally transparent window instantly turned black, blocking people's sight. Hermione was worrying in the carriage, and was thinking about whether to cover the glass with clothes. She didn't expect that Ryan would take this into consideration so thoughtfully. After quickly changing her clothes, the little witch appeared in front of Ryan in a Hogwarts robe. Ryan's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but rub Hermione's head a few times, which made Hermione pouted in dissatisfaction, shaking her head and trying to escape from Ryan's clutches. Fortunately, Ryan only bothered her a few times, otherwise Hermione might have bitten him. The next person to change clothes was Ryan, and Neville originally planned to change clothes with him. However, Ryan didn't like changing clothes with others, so he rejected Neville's proposal. About half an hour after the three of them changed their clothes, a voice sounded on the train, "The train will arrive at Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage in the car and we will deliver it to you. Went to school." After hearing this voice, Neville's little face became paler than before, and his movements when getting out of the car became a little stiff. Hermione took a deep breath and exhaled it slowly, trying to calm her heart. "Why do you have such expressions?" Ryan asked curiously as he watched the two men changing their faces. "Aren't you nervous? We still don't know what the so-called entrance test is? But it's no wonder. You are already so strong, so you don't need to care about this test for little wizards." Hermione looked nervous and spoke a lot very quickly. After sighing a little, Ryan said with a smile, "It's useless to worry now. Let's get out quickly. There is almost no one in the car." Hermione sighed slightly and looked around. Indeed, as Ryan said, there were not many little wizards left in the car. A worried Hermione got out of the car, with Ryan following her and Neville last. After getting off the bus, the three of them found that most of the little wizards had gathered in front of the station. There stood a giant holding a lantern in his hand and wearing a thick beard. "First year little wizard, come here, okay? First year little wizard." A loud voice sounded, but Hermione was startled by the sound. She stood next to Ryan and muttered in a low voice, "It's really scary. Rubber Hagrid, my grandma said that he is the keykeeper of Hogwarts and the warden of the Forbidden Forest. My grandma said that he is a good person, although he sometimes causes trouble." Neville seemed to have heard it. Hermione whispered, quietly. Hermione glanced at Neville and lowered her head with a slight blush. The little girl was a little embarrassed to be heard saying bad things about others. Fortunately, Hagrid didn't embarrass Hermione for long, because he quickly shouted again, "First-year students, hurry up, we can't miss the opening ceremony." The three of them hurried towards Hagrid. After counting the number of little wizards twice to ensure that no one was left behind, Hagrid led the little wizards forward. This is a small road, and the lack of light makes it even more difficult to walk on this small road. From time to time, a little wizard would stumble, and if it weren't for the sharp eyesight and quick hands of the people around him, he would probably have fallen down hard. Dark vision. Ryan took out his wand and cast a spell on himself and Hermione to help them see the road clearly. This is a spell specially used for night vision, and the magical effect surprised the little girl. "Ryan, I really envy you for knowing so much magic." Hermione lowered her head and whispered quietly. "You will definitely do it in the future." Ryan comforted. 4 people per boat. Remember, 4 people per boat, no more." Hermione wanted to say something else, but Hagrid's loud voice came from the front. In desperation, Hermione could only close her mouth. Chapter 24. This is a small boat that can only seat 4 people. There was an oil lamp on the bow, illuminating a small area. The entire lake was completely shrouded in a layer of light white mist, making it difficult to see the distance. Ryan pulled Hermione and sat on the boat closest to him, and Neville followed. The little fat man was a little nervous and even afraid to look at the lake. "When I was a child, my family always thought I was a squib, so they always used various methods to try to make me have magical riots. I remember several times, they threw me into the lake, hoping that I would have magical riots. Later once, my uncle accidentally dropped me out of the window, and I bounced back up, which made them very happy. My uncle also bought me Lifa after that incident." Neville sat on the bow of the boat, lowered his head, buried his face in the shadow, and said silently. Ryan and Hermione looked at each other and said nothing. It seems difficult for outsiders to say anything about other people's family affairs. After a while, a little girl with freckles and brown hair got on the boat. Sorry, but the other boats are full, she said. Emily Scadwin. Emily sat at the stern of the boat, straightened her messy hair and said. Just call me Zell. Ryan said lightly. Hello, my name is Neville Longbottom, you can call me Neville. Neville said very quietly, as if he was a little afraid of this new little girl on the ship. Hermione Granger. Hermione was somewhat enthusiastic about this new girl on the ship, perhaps because she was the only girl on the ship. Are you all seated securely? We're about to set off. Hagrid's loud voice made every little wizard subconsciously hold on to the side of the boat. At this time, Hermione also realized that she was sitting on the boat leading to Hogwarts. She was no longer talking to Emily, but was just holding on to the side of the boat with her hands. Emily wasn't much better, some cold sweat began to break out on the little girl's forehead. Neville was trembling even more, closing his eyes and not knowing what he was talking about. Seeing how nervous the three of them were, Ryan had no choice but to look down at the lake. The lake looked full of black, and under the cover of night, it was impossible to see even a trace of the underwater scene. The boat gently cut across the entire lake, leaving cracks on the flat lake surface, but it returned to calm in an instant. Lower your head. Hagrid's voice startled the little wizard who was accustomed to silence, and Neville even shivered. This is a cave covered with vines. Due to the presence of the oil lamp on the bow of the boat, Ryan can still see the two walls clearly. After about 3 or 4 minutes, the fleet sailed out of the cave, and what came into view was the castle on the cliff. Although I had already seen the castle when I boarded the boat on the other side, it was too far away at that time and it was far less shocking than when I saw it up close. The tall towers, wide and thick walls, and windows with orange light all shocked the little wizard who saw this castle for the first time. Do we need to stay here for 7 years? Hermione murmured. Although Hermione's family was wealthy, it was not enough to live in a castle. Seeing such a tall castle for the first time and having to live here for 7 years gave the little girl an unrealistic feeling. After leaving the cave, the next journey is very close. 2 minutes later, the ship stopped at a pier in Hogwarts. One by one, the little wizards jumped from the boat to the dock, and then huddled together not too close or too far in front of Hagrid. From a distance, they looked like lambs united to face the prey of a lion. Of course, Ryan was not among them. Hagrid seemed to be immune to the sight in front of him and didn't pay much attention. He said directly, "Okay, is everyone here? Please line up and let me count the number of people." The little wizards jostled to finish the queue, and Hagrid quickly counted the number of people. "Okay, now that everyone is here, please come with me and let us walk into the door of magic together." After saying that, Hagrid walked forward with the lantern in his hand. Everyone came to a door, and Hagrid stepped forward and slapped it hard twice, causing some dust on the top of the door to fall down. After a few pats, Hagrid stopped. He took a few steps back, and the door opened from the inside. A witch in green robes and a pointed hat stood behind the door. Her serious look and unsmiling temperament made many young wizards feel nervous. "First year, Professor McGonagall," Hagrid said in a low voice. "Thank you, Hagrid, leave the rest to me." Professor McGonagall nodded to Hagrid and said. Hagrid also nodded, then walked back the way he had come with the lantern. After watching Hagrid leave, Professor McGonagall cast her eyes on the group of young wizards in front of her. The childish face, eyes full of curiosity about magic, and a look of panic about the entrance ceremony reminded Professor McGonagall of the time when she was a student. Taking a deep breath, Professor McGonagall calmed down. "Okay, everyone, follow me," Professor McGonagall said, then turned around and walked forward. Professor McGonagall took the little wizards to an empty room. The room is small, so the little wizards need to be squeezed together. Next, Professor McGonagall briefly introduced the 4 colleges and the college system, and then turned and left. Later, Ryan saw the ghost of the magical world. A creature with pearly whites and a transparent body. Yes, a creature. In Ryan's eyes, a ghost is also a kind of creature. He looked at these ghosts with interest, possessing consciousness and endless life, but the side effects were that they could not touch physical objects and use magic. A kind of immortality in disguise with great side effects. Ryan murmured, staring at the fat monk who was speaking. "What did you say?" Hermione asked. She was reciting the magic spell she remembered during the summer vacation, holding her wand in her little hand, with cold sweat dripping from her palms. Soon, Professor McGonagall came back with a piece of parchment in her hand. "Okay, kids, line up and follow me," Professor McGonagall said. "Open the door and walk into the restaurant. Above the head are countless candles and the starry sky, surrounded by tables from the 4 major colleges, with gold-plated tableware placed on the tables." The little wizards followed Professor McGonagall in a row, walked to the front under the gaze of all the wizards, and then lined up in a row. Hermione had her eyes closed at the moment and was reciting spells quickly, not paying attention to the starry sky above her head. Ryan was not frightened by the sight in front of him. Instead, he looked at the little wizard and the entire restaurant with interest. This room is huge, and the light coming from nowhere makes the whole restaurant extremely bright, because the light of candles alone is not enough to make the whole room so bright. While Ryan was looking around the room, the sorting ceremony began. The cheers of the little wizards when Harry Potter was sorted into Gryffindor brought Ryan back to his senses. Hermione had already sat at the Gryffindor table. When she saw Ryan looking over, Hermione gave him a sweet smile and then made a cheering gesture for him. Ryan nodded to Hermione, all of which was seen by Dumbledore. When Old B saw this scene, he showed a happy smile. Ryan Zell. After Professor McGonagall read Ryan's name, he rolled up the parchment. Ryan is the last little wizard in this class. Sitting on the round stool, Ryan was put on the sorting hat. A very interesting soul. You are full of greed for power and don't mind using some means to succeed. Slytherin is a good choice. But I also have a longing for delicious food in my bones, and Hufflepuff is not bad either. Your little head is also very smart and you realize the importance of knowledge. Ravenclaw is also very suitable for you. It's really hard to choose, really. The whisper in Ryan's ear suddenly disappeared, which made Ryan feel strange. After waiting for about 10 seconds, the sound had not yet sounded. Ryan planned to take off the sorting hat to see if there was something wrong with the sorting hat. No, there's nothing wrong with me. The sorting hat's voice sounded. You are also full of desire to explore the unknown, and Gryffindor is also very good. It's really hard to decide. Ryan felt strange for a while. It was obvious that he did not have the temperament that Gryffindor valued. The last sentence was obviously added by the sorting hat himself. No, you have the qualities of a Gryffindor. I am the sorting hat. I have never made a mistake in thousands of years. You have to believe me. The sorting hat's voice was full of urgency and panic. Okay, kid, don't think about this too much. Let's think about which house to go to. How about Gryffindor? The sorting hat said in a good-natured way. Ryan thought for a while and suddenly realized that Dumbledore might have noticed him. No, it's not. You really have the qualities of a Gryffindor. Alas, Ryan sighed in his heart, isn't there 300 taels of silver in this place? The sorting hat seemed to realize that his words might have had the opposite effect, so he began to play dead. Can you figure out which house I'm most suitable for? I'll put my reputation on the sorting hat on the line. Ryan thought silently in his heart. The sorting hat thought for a while, then shouted, Slytherin. Professor McGonagall took away the sorting hat from Ryan's head with a worried look on her face. She watched helplessly as the talented young wizard entered Slytherin, a country that seriously discriminated against muggles and was rich in dark wizards. Ryan bowed slightly towards Professor McGonagall, and then sat down on the Slytherin table next to Malfoy amidst the applause of all the young wizards. Because this is the only seat left. Malfoy moved his tableware aside, as if he was afraid that Ryan's muggle breath would contaminate him. The damn mudblood dared to enter the palace of Slytherin and taint the pure bloods. Malfoy murmured. Chapter 25. Although Malfoy's voice was very low, Ryan still heard it. To be honest, only those who understand the history of the wizarding world know the meaning of the curse word mudblood. It's like someone scolding you in dialect. If you don't understand the specific meaning of that sentence, you have no idea that the other person has scolded you. But Ryan knew the meaning of this sentence, so Ryan's hand had already touched the wand. The Slytherin snakes around all looked over. It was obvious that they heard those words and began to pay attention to the excitement here. But Ryan gave up, because Dumbledore stood up now. Welcome. He said, welcome to Hogwarts, everyone. Before the banquet begins, I want to say a few words. That is, idiot. Crying nose. Residue. Screw it. Thank you everyone. Then, a lot of food appeared in front of Ryan. In front of his stomach, Ryan released his right hand holding the wand. Teach Malfoy not to rush this moment. After all, it would be impossible to fight in front of all the professors and young wizards. At most, Malfoy would be put in solitary confinement. That would be too much happiness for Malfoy. During the meal, there were only whispers of conversation at the entire Slytherin table, which was not as lively as the other 3 tables, and no young wizard was willing to talk to Ryan. But this is exactly what Ryan wants. He likes to eat quietly and enjoy his own time alone. Ha ha ha, I have practiced magic at home during the summer vacation. Although I am still not very proficient in it now, at least I can release it, which is much better than some people. Malfoy's voice broke the silence at the Slytherin table. Ryan frowned. He didn't expect Malfoy to target him like this. Shouldn't it be Harry Potter? But Ryan ignored him completely and just ate the food on his plate. After finishing a piece of potato quickly, Ryan felt that a little more juice would be perfect. Just when Ryan's hand was about to touch the jug of orange juice, Malfoy's hand came out of nowhere and knocked over the jug containing orange juice. The orange liquid flowed freely on the Slytherin table, and then dripped to the ground, exuding a sweet smell. All the Slytherin snakes' attention was attracted by the situation here, and they even forgot to talk to each other. The professors on the faculty bench naturally noticed the situation here, and Snape's already cold face became even colder now. Did your own house have a conflict here in front of the entire Hogwarts during the opening ceremony? Isn't this rubbing Snape's face on the ground? Professor McGonagall frowned. She still believed that the Sorting Hat should not sort the houses in this way. Dumbledore also stopped his knife and fork and looked here. The situation at the staff table quickly attracted the attention of the young wizards below, and then all the young wizards in Hogwarts turned their attention to the Slytherin table at this moment. I'm curious about something, Mr. Malfoy. Ryan wiped his mouth and said, Why are you always targeting me? Just because I am a mudblood. A cold voice sounded in the extremely quiet restaurant, causing countless young wizards born into wizard families to start discussing in low voices. Hermione also began to ask Percy next to her what mudblood meant. But soon, the little witch covered her mouth and looked at Ryan in surprise. Of course, or are there other reasons? Although Malfoy realized that something was wrong, the honor of the Malfoy family did not allow him to back down at this time. After hearing Malfoy's admission, the little wizards started talking louder. Mr. Malfoy, please pay attention to your words. Since you are so rude, Slytherin. Professor McGonagall was interrupted by Ryan's words before she finished speaking. Malfoy, since you have such a problem with me, then wizard matters should be resolved the wizard's way. How about we have a duel? Ryan stood up from his seat, pointed his wand at Malfoy and said. Snape's hands were shaking with anger at this time. He didn't expect that the original Slytherin infighting turned into a fight between the same roommates. Everyone was frightened by Ryan's move, but immediately began to become restless again. Young wizards who are in adolescence are full of desire for wizard duels, a battle full of blood and violence. Now all the little wizards began to look at Malfoy, and thousands of gazes forced Malfoy to make a choice. If you choose to fight, just look at Snape's face and you will know that there will probably be no good results. If he doesn't fight, then Malfoy will definitely believe that tomorrow's Daily Prophet's headline will be that the heir of the Malfoy family refused to accept an invitation to a duel from a Muggle wizard. In the end, Malfoy chose to accept the duel. The little wizards quickly cleared a large area. Originally, Professor McGonagall wanted to stop it, but quickly gave up the idea. Wizards' duel holds an extremely high status in the magical world. It is the highest way to resolve conflicts between wizards. Even if the enemy is killed in a duel, the Ministry of Magic will not care. The two quickly stood on the clearing cleared by the little wizards, first bowed to each other, and then held up their wands to distance themselves from each other. 1, 2, 3. The one counting was Gryffindor's Lee Jordan, who was also the commentator for the Hogwarts Quidditch House Cup. Just as Lee Jordan finished saying 3, Malfoy shouted loudly, Front teeth. Avada Kedavra. Before Malfoy finished shouting the spell, Ryan recited the spell first. A dark green light bloomed from the tip of Ryan's elder wand, and then quickly hit Malfoy. Malfoy was directly knocked into the air, and after drawing a beautiful arc in the air, he fell heavily to the ground, splashing some dust. The little wizards looked at Malfoy, who was lying motionless on the ground, and were stunned for a moment, and then quickly screamed. The professors on the faculty bench were stunned for a moment, but they quickly took out their wands. Professor McGonagall was the most anxious. She raised her wand, but Dumbledore pressed it down. Facing Professor McGonagall's confused look, Dumbledore just smiled and said, "Don't worry, Malfoy is not dead." The words were spoken loud enough for everyone present to hear them. For a moment, all the little wizards were stunned again, first looking at Malfoy lying on the ground, and then at Harry, who was huddled behind the Weasley twins. Is it possible that there will be one more boy who lived today? This is the inner thought of all little wizards. Chapter 26. In the end, the little wizards were disappointed. There was no second boy who lived. Ryan only used a stun spell, but it changed the color, plus a silent spell, but he shouted the curse of the death curse. After using the waking spell, Malfoy slowly got up from the ground. Looking at the playful looks of the little wizards around him, Malfoy wanted to find a crack to get in immediately. Goyle and Crabbe rushed over to help Malfoy and carried him to the dining table. "Quiet!" Dumbledore's voice echoed throughout the restaurant again. He first glanced at Ryan and Malfoy, and then said, "Next, I need to make a few points. First of all, the Forbidden Forest next to the school prohibits any young wizards from entering. I hope the first-year students can remember this, as will some old students." Dumbledore's eyes flicked towards the Weasley twins. "Furthermore, the administrator, Mr. Filch, also asked me to remind everyone not to release magic in the corridor. Third, the review of Quidditch players will be carried out in the second week of this semester. Students who are willing can go to Mrs. Hooch to sign up. The most important thing is that if you don't want to suffer an accident and die in pain, please do not enter the corridor on the right on the 4th floor." After Dumbledore finished speaking, the little wizards below started talking again. At this time, the little wizard's curiosity about the mysterious room on the 4th floor mentioned by Dumbledore instantly overshadowed the duel just now. After all, this is a warning from the greatest white wizard of this century. "Oh, I almost forgot." Dumbledore's voice sounded again, which made the little wizard below instantly shut his mouth, holding his breath and wanting to hear what Dumbledore said next. "It's school song time now. Everyone chooses the tune they like." After saying that, a golden ribbon flew out of the top of his wand, forming lines of text in the air. The expressions of the professors on the faculty bench and the old students at the dining table froze, but they still stood up and started singing. "Hogwarts, Hogwarts." Finally, the opening ceremony ended to the tune of the Weasley twins' funeral march. The little wizards, led by their respective prefects, walked to the lounges of their respective colleges. As they walked, they frantically discussed today's opening ceremony. In addition to the new students, the old students are also full of heated discussions about today's opening ceremony. First, he met the legendary savior, the boy who lived, Harry Potter, and then saw the birth of another boy who lived. Of course, there was more discussion about Ryan who used the unforgivable curse. Many little wizards want to learn this little trick, which is the same as banning guns. "I can't get a real gun, so I can have fun with a toy, right?" On the other side, Ryan was following the Slytherin prefects to the Slytherin lounge. However, there was a large void around Ryan, and all the Slytherin freshmen were full of fear of Ryan. Although Ryan did not cast the real unforgivable curse, do you want to say that Ryan cannot cast the unforgivable curse? Even Peeves might not believe it. After all, that green light is so real. "Congratulations, I am Gemma Foley, Prefect, and I am delighted to welcome you to Slytherin House." This senior Gemma introduced a lot of things. The dining room is on the 1st floor and the Slytherin common room is in the basement. Originally, Ryan thought they would go directly to the Slytherin lounge, but he didn't expect that Senior Gemma would take them to visit several classrooms where classes would be held in the future. Finally came to the basement. "Everyone, come here." Senior Sister Gemma clapped her hands and called all the freshmen over. "Have you seen this wall? This is the entrance to the Slytherin lounge. It requires a password to open. The password changes every 2 weeks and I will paste it on the bulletin board. I hope you can go and see it in time. Remember, I don't want any of you to be stupid enough to be locked out." Silver Snake spits out a letter. As Senior Gemma's voice fell, the smooth wall in front of her suddenly dented, and then slid inward, revealing an entrance. Following Senior Gemma into the Slytherin lounge, what came into view were many European-style sofas with green cushions on them. Before Ryan could take a closer look, Senior Gemma spoke again. "Okay, freshmen, I know you are all new to this, but I have to remind you that because we are familiar with the route of class today, it is a bit late. I suggest you go to bed now, otherwise be careful not to be late for class tomorrow." The Senior Gemma paused, then said with a smile, "Believe me, if any of you dares to deduct points on the first day of school, I will definitely let him feel the love from the senior. Although Senior Gemma spoke with a smile, the little wizards present felt a chill. Okay, I've posted the dormitory assignments on the bulletin board. Good night, everyone. After saying that, Senior Gemma left without looking back. Ryan slowly sat on the sofa, and then watched the other Slytherin wizards crowded in front of the bulletin board to check their dormitories. About 2 minutes later, Ryan was the only one left in the Slytherin common room. He walked over to the bulletin board and checked his dormitory. Then he left with a mysterious smile. Because the bulletin board clearly says Ryan Zell, Draco Malfoy, the third dormitory on the left. By the time Ryan entered the dormitory, Malfoy was already lying on the bed. It looked like he was asleep. Ryan ignored him, washed himself, and lay down on the bed. The velvet bed was so soft that it felt like you were sinking into it when you lay on it. Ryan stared at the transparent glass above his head. There were several small fish swimming inside, and occasionally a few Grindelwalds appeared. But the big octopus that Senior Gemma talked about has never been seen. With random thoughts in his mind, Ryan fell asleep without knowing when. The next day, Ryan got up very early. Malfoy was sleeping soundly and snoring slightly. It looked like he was so worried that he stayed up very late yesterday. Ignoring Malfoy, Ryan washed up and left the Slytherin lounge. Today's morning was History of Magic. It was an extremely boring class, but it was taken with Gryffindor. Ryan walked casually in the corridor, saying hello to the portraits around him from time to time. He quickly reached the owl loft, where Paige was resting. But as if it sensed Ryan's arrival, it opened its eyes and flew to Ryan's shoulder. Ryan fed it some nuts and smoothed its hair. Chapter 27. Guessing that time was almost up, Ryan released Paige and then came to the restaurant. The most satisfying thing about Slytherin is that the lounge is very close to the dining room and classrooms. Except for astronomy class. There were a few young wizards sitting sparsely in the restaurant. It was still relatively early, so there were not many people there. Hermione had already sat at the Gryffindor table, flipping through the History of Magic textbook and eating breakfast. The little girl half closed her eyes and nodded from time to time, as if she hadn't slept well. Ryan walked to the Gryffindor table and sat directly opposite Hermione. This move made the little wizards in the restaurant raise their heads and look here in surprise. In all their years at Hogwarts, they had never seen a student wearing Slytherin uniform sitting at the Gryffindor table. The little wizards began to chatter. Some of them took some food and walked outside the restaurant. They couldn't wait to share this interesting story with their friends who had not seen this scene. Hermione heard the discussion of the young wizards, sighed helplessly and said, "Ryan, aren't you afraid of being isolated in Slytherin? It's okay. They don't want to see me anyway, not to mention what happened last night." Ryan shook his head gently and said. Hearing this, Hermione seemed to suddenly think of something, and said with some urgency, "There won't be any punishment for your duel last night, right?" Ryan smiled and touched Hermione's hair and said, "There is no punishment." "Oh, how is that possible? You know how to make me happy. You will definitely be punished for having a magic duel in front of so many little wizards at the opening ceremony." Hermione didn't seem to hear Ryan's words and began to read them in fragments. Ryan was filled with dark thoughts, and quickly interrupted Hermione's words, and said helplessly, "Don't worry, even the Ministry of Magic can't control magic duels. And what's more, it was Malfoy who scolded me first. According to that voice, even if I kill him on the spot, I won't have anything to say." As he spoke, Ryan also made a gesture of wiping his neck. When Hermione saw Ryan's actions, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and said, Okay, please hurry back to the Slytherin table. You don't care what other people think of you, but I do." Ryan looked around and found that there were many little wizards in the restaurant, and most of them were pointing here. "Okay, see you in the library at noon. The library is on the second floor." After finishing speaking, Ryan waved to Hermione and sat down at the Slytherin table. Breakfast at Hogwarts was much better than when Ryan was alone at home. At least there was a mouthful of hot food. Usually when he was at home, Ryan always picked 2 vegetables to solve the problem. After finishing his breakfast quickly, Ryan picked up the History of Magic textbook out of boredom and started reading. What could be heard was the sound of the young wizards discussing his sitting at the Gryffindor table. The Slytherin wizards sat further away from him. After breakfast, Ryan came to the classroom on the second floor. Hermione was already seated with a girl, and it seemed that the little girl had begun to deliberately avoid contact with Ryan in public. Ryan randomly found a seat near the corner and sat down. Although he knew that Professor Binns was unlikely to care what the students in class were doing down there, Ryan felt that he had better not be too presumptuous. It seemed that many students had the same idea as Ryan, and within a short time, there were many people in Ryan's corner. Gryffindor accounts for 70% and Slytherin accounts for 30%. However, students from both colleges subconsciously stayed away from Ryan, and the seats next to Ryan and the seats in the front row were unoccupied. Ryan was very satisfied with this. He wanted to read some books about the changes in the Book of All Laws in class. Although those little wizards may not be able to understand it, it is better to stay away just in case. Professor Binns entered the classroom through the blackboard, which made the little wizard below let out an exclamation. But soon, the hypnotic attack from Professor Binns caused the little wizards below to fall into sleep. So the first lesson in the magic school of the little wizards' lives was spent in their drowsiness. Including Hermione. The little girl just arrived at this school that specializes in teaching magic last night, and she was so excited that she didn't sleep well. Although she tried hard to persevere, she was ultimately defeated by Professor Binns's hypnotic method. When the bell rang, everyone slowly got up from the table. Occasionally, a few little wizards left their own unique marks on the table. After simply finishing his lunch, Ryan went to the library on the second floor. Mrs. Pants sat behind her desk, staring at every young wizard who came and went, although there were not many wizards coming and going. Maybe because the school has just started, there are very few people in the library. It's even more unheard of for a freshman like Ryan to come to the library. So Mrs. Pings glanced at Ryan a few more times and memorized Ryan's appearance carefully. After all, some freshmen don't know the importance and easily destroy books. The library at Hogwarts was larger than it looked, and Ryan guessed that the invisible stretching charm was used here. But it's normal to think about it. The books accumulated over thousands of years would probably not fit on the entire second floor without the use of the traceless stretching charm. Ryan picked up a book about the origin of the curse, sat down next to it and started reading. After a while, Hermione also came to the library. She looked around and found Ryan sitting at the table reading a book. However, Ryan was so absorbed in watching that he didn't notice Hermione's arrival. Hermione did not disturb Ryan, but casually pulled a book from the bookshelf and sat next to Ryan. For Hermione, it was enough to have someone to read with her. In the Muggle primary school, Hermione couldn't find a child who was willing to read with her. "Hermione, when did you come and why didn't you call me?" As he turned the page, Ryan noticed someone else beside him out of the corner of his eye. When he looked closely, it turned out to be Hermione. "I saw you were quite absorbed in reading just now, so I didn't bother you again," Hermione said. "No chatting in the library." Mrs. Pants's voice came from the side. She had already been staring at the two freshmen. After all, the new students who come to the library right after the semester starts are very suspicious. However, Mrs. Pinksy did not hold on and left after reminding her. She had to go and see if there were any other little wizards doing things that had nothing to do with reading and studying. This is a library, a holy place for learning, not just for you to chat. Mrs. Pants thought so. Chapter 28. In the afternoon class, Slytherin and Gryffindor are different. Slytherin takes Charms class with Ravenclaw, Gryffindor takes Transfiguration class with Hufflepuff. In order to leave enough time for Hermione to go up to the 8th floor to get her textbooks, and then return to the 1st floor for the Transfiguration class, Ryan and Hermione stayed in the library for a while and then came out. In Mrs. Pants's cannibalistic eyes, Ryan took away the borrowed book without changing his expression. Ryan originally wanted to use a copying spell to directly copy the book, but he did not expect that the library was equipped with an anti-copying spell. I read about this in Hogwarts, a school history. In 1756, students began to commonly use copying and copying spells to extract sentences from books and put them into homework, so the school set up anti-copying spells and anti-copying spells in the library. And since then, there has been a limit on the books that each person can borrow at the same time, with a maximum of 3 books per person. This was what Hermione said after Ryan discovered that his copying spell had failed. Fortunately, the copying spell can still be used elsewhere. Ryan looked at Mrs. Pants's eyes and sighed silently. Now that he wanted to empty out the entire Hogwarts library, he estimated that it would take hundreds of years. After leaving the door, the two of them walked upstairs together. The Charms classroom is on the 4th floor, and the two of them can walk 2 floors together. There is a possibility of meeting other young wizards further up, which doesn't matter to Ryan himself, but Hermione's situation in Gryffindor is probably more uncomfortable than in the original book. Okay, let's separate here. Hermione said, staring at Ryan. Of course. Ryan replied with a smile, and then he stroked the little girl's head, messing up the already fluffy hair. This made Hermione stomp on Ryan's foot hard, and then angrily walked up the stairs without looking back. After calming down for a while, Ryan put the books he just borrowed into the traceless stretch bag in his arms, and then wandered in the armor corridor on the 4th floor. There are various types of armor in this corridor, including armor from different countries and different eras. Walking here, you can see the Mingguang armor of the Tang dynasty and the plate armor popular in the Middle Ages, as if you are watching the progress of human civilization. But what Ryan was interested in was obviously not this, but the alchemy technology on these armors. Under Ryan's perception, these armors exuded waves of magic power. Ryan fully believed that if Hogwarts was attacked one day, these armors would definitely follow the instructions of the real principle to defend against foreign enemies. After observing the two armors, Ryan came to the Charms classroom. There were many books on the podium in front of the Charms classroom, forming a small platform for Professor Flitwick to stand on. Half of the people sitting in the classroom at this time were all Ravenclaws. A small snake was mixed into a group of eaglets, and there was such a funny scene in the whole classroom. The eaglets occupied the front seats in the middle, while a little snake sat in the corner. However, the little eagles didn't pay much attention to the little snake who came early. They just flipped through the textbooks and occasionally discussed with the classmates around them. The whole classroom maintains a calm atmosphere. About 10 minutes later, the little Slytherin wizards came to the Charms classroom. They walked into the classroom in groups, and occasionally a few said hello to the Ravenclaw students. There was still no one sitting in the small corner where Ryan was, and Slytherin seemed to be using this kind of cold violence to fight against him. After everyone sat down, Professor Flitwick walked in with his short legs. He slowly climbed up to the pile of books, looking very funny, but no little wizard below laughed. This is the magical world, and the awe of the strong is deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. In this Charms lesson, there is no magic, no charms, and no wands. Professor Flitwick only talked about some theories about magic spells on the podium, but what he said was very interesting. Even if it was a boring theoretical class, the little wizard below listened very carefully. Maybe there's also a bit of the novelty of coming into contact with magic for the first time. Ryan took a lot of notes. What he lacks now is the basic knowledge of this world. Now Ryan is like a tool user, but Ryan wants to be a tool maker, and what he lacks is the knowledge about the tools. After such a lesson, Ryan gained a lot. Nowhere else can anyone tell you everything in such a systematic and easy to understand manner. Okay, today's class ends here. Before class next week, each person will write a paper about the general incantation we talked about today, no less than half a foot long. Perhaps it was because of the first class of the semester that Professor Flitwick gave him a very simple assignment, and the manuscript requirements were not long. Hello, Zell, I didn't expect you to be in Slytherin. A familiar voice sounded in Ryan's ears. This made Ryan feel strange, because he had just entered the magical world and didn't know many people at all. And in my current situation, someone actually came up to say hello to me? Looking up, Emily Scavan was standing in front of him. Hello, I didn't expect that I would be sorted into Slytherin. After all, here, you know. Ryan shrugged and said helplessly. At first, he really liked Slytherin's quality of not sacrificing means to achieve his goals, and he thought he was in line with this temperament. But when I actually entered Slytherin, I found that the pure-blood thinking here was still too serious. You don't seem to be distressed. Emily asked curiously. If the average person didn't have a single friend in school and was ostracized like this, they would probably be unable to bear it long ago. Looking at Ryan now, he seems to be a little contented. Why should I be worried? Ryan finished clearing the things on the table and stood up. Okay, I have to go eat, bye. That Miss Granger. Ryan didn't say anything, but it was considered acquiescence. He, a Slytherin fell in love with a Gryffindor. If your dean knew, he would probably reprimand you severely. You must know that Professor Snape is not an easy person to get along with. I listened to what the seniors say. Emily kept talking next to Ryan, but after talking for a while and seeing that Ryan ignored her, the little girl pursed her lips and walked away angrily, and glared hard at Gran who was walking towards him. Miss J. I was stupid. I was typing at night, and my dad came in and said to me, "Can you help me download a software?" The platform seems to have stopped operating. I still have more than 10,000 yuan left to spend. I felt like I was struck by lightning. I worked hard for a long time and couldn't figure it out. I have no choice but to go to the bank tomorrow to get a statement and report the crime. I would like to remind everyone here that if the annual interest rate is 9%/10%, you must be careful, as the pie in the sky will not fall into the sky. Some financial software also needs to be more careful. It is best to take a screenshot of each transaction and leave the transaction, account, transfer institution, and other information. 2. I am going to get the COVID-19 vaccine tomorrow. I don't know how long I will have to wait in line, so I can only say that I will try my best to get it. 3. Thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. Also, can Gideon really get 46 recommendation tickets a day? Chapter 29. Hermione glared at Emily, a little confused. She walked up to Ryan, looked at him strangely, and said, "What's wrong with her? Is it so inexplicable? Maybe it's just so baffling." Ryan said, looking at Hermione. "Okay, I'm going to the library to finish the homework assigned today, will you go?" Hermione didn't think much about it. Ryan nodded. Things like homework will only accumulate more and more. If you don't seize the time to solve the problem when the workload is small, you will feel a sense of powerlessness when the workload increases. It will be even more painful by then. All the way to the second floor, there were many freshmen exploring this 1,000-year-old castle. After seeing Ryan and Hermione, these new students would first smile and say hello, and then open their mouths in surprise. If the real situation hadn't appeared in front of them, they wouldn't have believed that Slytherin and Gryffindor could get together. Now everyone seems to know that we are friends. Hermione sat on a chair in the library and kicked Ryan's foot angrily. "I don't care. Is there any problem with you?" Ryan took down a book about general spells from the bookshelf and asked softly. "No, the girls in the dormitory don't seem to like me very much, and I don't like them very much either." Hermione put down the pen in her hand, propped her head and looked at Ryan. "Hey? Why?" Ryan felt Hermione's gaze and put down the book in his hand and looked at her. Hermione looked into Ryan's eyes and felt that there seemed to be something attracting her. She stared blankly at Ryan. This was the first time in more than 10 years that she had looked so carefully into the eyes of the opposite sex. "You haven't answered my question yet," Ryan said with a slight tease on his face. Only then did the little girl realize that she stared at Ryan in an extremely unladylike manner for a long time. Her face instantly turned red, all the way to the back of her ears. Hermione turned her face away and said in a small voice, "They seem to have some misunderstandings about reading books. I really don't understand why they are so resistant to books. They are obviously the ladder of human progress." To be honest, if Ryan hadn't been a wizard, he might not have been able to hear the sound. "Maybe they are just jealous that you have such a great mind? You know, mortals always like to be jealous of the immortality and majestic power of gods. Wizards are not mortals. If they don't have enough power, maybe they will be just a little better than mortals in the near future. Especially with Voldemort's imminent return." Ryan added silently in his mind. "Well, no matter what you say, I only know that if you don't complete your homework now, you will find that you are just a mortal in front of the professor when class starts next week." Hermione rolled her eyes at Ryan, and then began to flip through the books in her hand to write a paper. Ryan shrugged and began to write his own paper. But after a while, Ryan had to ask Hermione for help. Because half of the books he was looking for were in Latin, and there were even a few in ancient Greek. In his previous life, he had only passed level 4 and obtained a degree certificate. In this life, he was just an orphan on Clear Street. It would be great if he could speak English fluently. As for Latin and Greek, Ryan really didn't understand them at all. But Hermione should understand, after all, the Granger family can be considered upper middle class. After Ryan raised this question, Hermione sighed and said with some complacency, "Then there is no other way. Let me give you a make-up lesson sometime. Anyway, if you don't understand these, this at least a quarter of the books in the library are incomprehensible to you. Yet, finally there's something he doesn't know how to do." Hermione cheered internally. Okay, what do you think about Saturday?" Ryan touched his chin and felt that Hermione's suggestion was a good one. He really wanted to learn Latin and Greek. "I have no problem, but didn't you copy all the books in the London library? Why didn't you study on your own? I don't think you can learn it." Hermione glanced at Ryan in confusion and said. Maybe it's the charm of magic. Ryan said half-jokingly. However, this also made Ryan realize a problem. His golden finger, the Book of All Laws, seemed to always be displayed in English. You can't use English in a different world, right? At this time, a piece of information suddenly appeared in Ryan's mind. The Book of All Laws will impartially and completely transform any language into the host's current subject. It's interesting. Can the book in front of me be translated? Ryan thought so. Then Ryan was surprised to find that all the words in the book in front of him were changed to English. Ryan didn't know whether the meaning had changed or not. After all, he didn't understand Latin. Ryan, are you okay? Hermione put down her homework at some point and looked at Ryan with concern. It turned out that Ryan's expression kept changing, making Hermione think something had happened to Ryan. No, nothing, just lamenting why there is no magic that can understand all languages. After all, we are wizards, aren't we? Is that so? Hermione didn't believe Ryan's words at all, but the little girl also understood that this was not a good time to ask questions. Seeing that Hermione had no intention of asking further questions, Ryan quietly breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he began to complain in his heart that it was too easy for him to put everything on his face. The two chatted while doing homework, and Kankan finished his homework before dinner. After packing up the tables and chairs, the two of them went down the stairs one after another. Although Ryan and Hermione knew that everyone might know about their relationship, they still needed to pretend on the surface. This was the result of a discussion between the two. Sometimes it's so weird, everyone just wants an excuse to cover up, even if the excuse is so ridiculous. Ryan and Hermione entered the restaurant one after another, which instantly attracted the attention of all the little wizards. Hermione looked a little embarrassed and sat down at the Gryffindor table with her head lowered. Ryan, on the other hand, was much more stale and sat at the Slytherin table enjoying his dinner regardless. But soon, Ryan was stopped by a senior from Slytherin. Zell. The senior who called Ryan frowned, as if the name was a bit difficult for him to say. What's the matter? Ryan replied calmly. Chapter 30. You should ask yourself this question. Maybe you don't have a noble bloodline, but at least you entered Slytherin. The senior said angrily without even introducing himself. Since you entered Slytherin, I think you should have a little bit of Slytherin pride. But look at you now, you are hanging out with a Gryffindor girl. A follower behind the senior, he also started roaring angrily. After glancing at the two of them, Ryan didn't pay attention to what they said at all. He just said lightly, perhaps you can mention it to Professor Snape. To be honest, Ryan still really wanted to see Snape's reaction after knowing this. After all, he also loved a Gryffindor. Oh, do you think we don't dare? The follower immediately retorted. What are you talking about? There is no need to bother Dean Snape with this matter. But, Beaver, this guy obviously doesn't get enough oil and salt. Kess, the little follower said. That's enough, Kess, shut up. I'm really unlucky to have a friend like you. Beaver said with some distress. Hearing this, Kess muttered in a low voice, it's as if I'm not unlucky. What are you talking about? Do you want to fight? Beaver grabbed Kess by the collar and said harshly. Kess waved his hand quickly and said with some difficulty, let go quickly, the kid is gone. Ha! Beaver turned around. There was only an empty plate and a pair of used knives and forks left on Ryan's seat. When did that kid leave? Beaver said silently, touching his chin. Probably when you and Kess were in love. At this moment, someone beside him spoke silently, which immediately made the little wizards laugh. Beaver immediately started to roll up his sleeves, and then looked around, as if he wanted to find the person who was talking behind him. At this time, Ryan and Hermione were walking outside the school. This was a relatively remote path with few people, but occasionally one or two pairs of young wizards could be seen. You seem to be in a good mood. Hermione raised her little head and looked at Ryan's angular face and the slightly raised corners of his mouth. Ryan glanced at Hermione, then turned his head and said, it's pretty good. Suddenly I found that some things looked decent, but it turned out that the inside was not what you imagined. The Slytherin pair? Hermione asked. This made Ryan very curious, but he was relieved after thinking about it. The person who knows you best is always your opponent. Don't think too much about it. This is something that the entire Hogwarts knows. They are another pair of treasures besides the Weasley twins. However, their relationship with the Weasley brothers is not very good. They seem to be on both sides. They are all working hard for the number 1 position in Hogwarts. After saying that, Hermione paused, and then continued in a helpless tone, although there are only these 2 pairs in the entire Hogwarts, they all seem to want to dominate the other side. Ryan looked at Hermione with surprise. It was only the first day of school and he already knew the situation of the school so clearly. Why are you looking at me like that? Didn't the little wizards talk about something when you were eating in the restaurant? Ahem. Ryan coughed twice to hide his embarrassment. He never listened to what those little wizards said, it had nothing to do with him anyway. It's time for you to make some friends, Ryan. You can't live in your own world all your life. Hermione said earnestly, like an old mother who is worried about her children. Ryan just smiled and said nothing. Then, as if he was afraid that Hermione would continue to annoy him, he said, I'm just a little wizard born as a muggle, and most of Slytherin's members are pure-blood families, so it's hard to make friends. It's not like they are all pure-bloods, there are also mixed bloods. With so many people, there will always be 1 or 2 friends. Hermione muttered, as if she was dissatisfied with Ryan's answer. Okay, what about you? Didn't you say you don't like your roommate? How about it? Have you made any friends? Seeing that Hermione still had the desire to continue talking, Ryan immediately began to change the topic. But Hermione's reaction was beyond Ryan's expectation. The little girl raised her little head and said with a smile on her face, Humph, of course I have friends. You're not the kind of friend who only lends you homework and notes, and everyone pretends not to know each other during normal times, right? The smile on the little girl's face seemed to freeze for an instant, then she slowly lowered her head and started kicking the weeds on both sides of the path. Ryan was also silent. He just made a random guess and guessed it right without thinking. Looking at Hermione who was in a depressed mood, Ryan was thinking quickly about how to comfort her. There was silence between the 2 of them. Hermione, don't be too sad. You don't like them to begin with, right? There's no need to force yourself to do something you don't want to do. After thinking for a long time, Ryan could only hold back such words of comfort that were not really comforting. Pug. Ha ha ha, Ryan, you are so cute. Hermione lowered her head and laughed suddenly. Seeing Hermione like this, Ryan still didn't understand that he had been deceived by this little girl. Evil hands climbed up to Hermione's cheeks, then pinched them gently and pulled them to both sides. Hermione, who originally had a smile on her face, stopped laughing instantly. Fortunately, Ryan didn't ravage Hermione's little face for long. Hermione rubbed the area on her face that had just been pinched by Ryan with both hands, and said angrily, It's not a gentleman to touch a lady. The originally fair and pink face turned a little rosy due to Ryan pinching it, which fascinated him for a while. Pervert. Hermione whispered, then stepped hard on Ryan's left foot. Ouch! Ryan jumped up, and then recalled his actions just now. There were indeed some things he shouldn't have done. Sorry, Hermione. Ryan apologized for his behavior just now. Since you said so, then I forgive you. But it's not your fault. If I'm to blame, it's my girl's natural beauty that made you fascinated for a while. Hermione said, standing up straight confidently. Ryan looked at the confident Hermione and couldn't help but rub Hermione's little head. It seems that the rumors are true? Maybe I should discuss with the principal about the regulations on how to transfer schools at Hogwarts. A cold, emotionless voice sounded from behind the 2 of them, which frightened Hermione and Ryan. Professor Snape. Hermione and Ryan turned around at the same time and said respectfully after seeing the person clearly. Chapter 31. Miss Granger. Snape said without changing his expression. When Hermione heard Snape calling her, she suddenly broke into a nervous sweat. No wonder Hermione was so scared, Snape was actually exuding a terrifying aura at this moment. Yes. Hermione responded subconsciously, which she didn't even react to. Perhaps you are very interested in this ancient castle that has been passed down for thousands of years, but I think as students you should still focus on your studies. At this time, you should think carefully about what the professors taught in class today in the library. Maybe it will give your little brains a little bit of what a brain should be like. Snape's lips moved up and down, and he spat out a large number of words. Professor, we have finished our homework. Although she was very afraid of Snape, Hermione felt that she should correct Snape's misunderstanding of herself. Snape obviously didn't expect that a Gryffindor would be so serious about finishing his homework after the first day of class. There was a rare hint of surprise and reminiscence in his originally empty eyes. The little witch in front of her looked so much like Lily, both full of wisdom and eager for knowledge. Then it's up to you. Mr. Zell, please come with me to my office. Snape completely gave up the idea of persuading Hermione, because Hermione looked less like a Gryffindor and more like a Ravenclaw. What can I do, Professor Snape? Ryan was a little curious about what he had done to deserve Snape's special visit to him. Hey! Snape smiled with a hint of unclear meaning. Use your brain, which is not much bigger than a giant monster. Think carefully about what you did yesterday. I'm sure that since the founding of Hogwarts, no young wizard has ever dared to have a public duel in front of the big guys at the opening ceremony. In a sense, you have also made history. I believe this incident will be passed down forever in the history of Hogwarts. You don't think that everything will be fine if you just slap your butt and leave, do you? Now you have to pay the price for what you have done. I have to tell you with regret, Mr. Zell, in view of your behavior of openly dueling at the opening ceremony and using false unforgivable curses to intimidate others, after discussion with several professors, I have decided to deduct 10 points and 1 month from you of confinement. Is there anything else you would like to say, Mr. Zell? Snape spoke for a long time and in the same tone. Okay, so it's you who enforces my confinement? Ryan asked. He had already known that there would be punishment, so he was not surprised now. Wait, what about Malfoy? This incident was originally caused by him. Seeing that Ryan was so stupidly preparing to leave with Snape, Hermione hurriedly spoke. His punishment is the same as Mr. Zell. Congratulations, Mr. Zell, you seem to have created another piece of history, because in the history of Hogwarts, no new student has ever been able to give his house a deduction before officially attending classes. It's divided, and it's still a lot. Didn't Malfoy also create history? Hermione seemed a little annoyed that Snape said that to Ryan, so she muttered in a low voice. Shut up, you're a Gryffindor, of course you don't care about Slytherin. Snape was affected by the fact that he went to his home college 20 minutes before the term started, and his heart ached. You must know that before this, Slytherin had won the Academy Cup for 7 consecutive years. When he thought that he might lose the Academy Cup this year because of these 20 points, Snape wanted to strangle Ryan and Draco to death right now. Finally, Ryan followed Snape to his office. Malfoy was also in the office. At this time, he was wearing dragon leather gloves, holding a blade in his right hand, and holding a slug with sharp horns in his left hand. What are you waiting for? Why don't you go and help? Isn't the purpose of confinement just to make you stand here as an audience? Seeing Ryan still standing here stupidly, Snape roared angrily. Ryan walked forward, took a pair of dragon leather gloves from the shelf next to him, and put them on his hands. There are many gloves on the shelf, and they all have signs of use. It seems that many students have been detained in solitary confinement. Ryan thought as he walked to the operating table. When Malfoy saw Ryan approaching, he wanted to move further away, but after receiving a sharp look from Snape, he became more honest. He grabbed a slug covered in mucus from the bucket next to him. Ryan could even see that the mucus had not been broken off after he took the slug out of the bucket. It's really disgusting. Ryan said in disgust. This is all your fault. Look what you did to make me have to deal with these disgusting guys here. Malfoy, who was next to him, heard Ryan murmur and said the same. Haha, I don't know the so-called guy. Think about who caused this incident. Ryan said lightly without even looking at Malfoy, then lowered his head and prepared to deal with the slug in his hand. Is there anything wrong with what I said? Malfoy still thinks that there is nothing wrong with what he did. That's enough. How long are you two going to talk about it? I'm telling you, if you can't deal with these horned slugs before 8 o'clock today, you will sleep with these slugs in my office all night today. Var. After Snape finished speaking viciously, he lowered his head and began to do his own business. After Ryan and Malfoy glared at each other, they also lowered their heads to deal with the bugs in their hands. Although Ryan has never operated it, fortunately he has read the book before. The useful part of the horned slug is its horn, and its body is a good fertilizer. Ryan held down the slug hard, but he didn't realize that the mucus on it was too slippery. Without noticing, the slug slipped from Ryan's fingertips and flew to Malfoy's head. Ah! Malfoy instantly let out a horrifying cry. What are you doing? Snape roared again. Sorry, Professor Snape, I haven't dealt with these before. I'll be more careful next time. Ryan said embarrassedly. He really hadn't done it before. Although I have read a lot of books about potions over the years, I have no practical experience at all due to lack of materials. After buying the materials from Diagon Alley, Ryan completely forgot about it. Chapter 32. Malfoy took the slug off his face with a disgusted look on his face and ran to the sink to cry in his face a little. There is a faucet and sink in Snape's office, probably for the convenience of handling some medicinal materials. After crying himself, Malfoy returned to the console, and then glared at Ryan fiercely. He now wondered whether Ryan was taking the opportunity to retaliate against him. However, Ryan's clumsy way of dealing with slugs also made it difficult for Malfoy to believe that Ryan was taking revenge on him. In the end, Malfoy had to swallow the bitter pill alone. Fortunately, the two of them finished processing the horned slugs before 8 o'clock, so they didn't have to sleep with the slugs in Snape's office. Master Malfoy. As soon as they went out, Goyle and Crabbe were waiting at the door. Malfoy raised his head, glanced at Ryan through his nostrils, and then swaggered away with Goyle and Crabbe. Ryan looked at Malfoy's leaving figure, shook his head and sighed. Putting aside what will happen in the future, Malfoy now seems to be just a spoiled child. The Hogwarts library closes at 8 o'clock. If you go now, you won't be able to get in at all. Ryan thought for a while and decided to take a walk around the castle first. It's really too early to go back to the dormitory now. The Slytherin common room, Hufflepuff common room, kitchen, Snape's office and the potions classroom are all underground. Ryan touched his belly and decided to go to the kitchen to find something to eat. The Hogwarts kitchens and the Hufflepuff lounge are very close, so all Ryan had to do was find the Hufflepuff lounge. The little badgers discovered a strange thing today. A small snake kept wandering in front of the little badger's lair. This made the Hufflepuff badgers nervous, thinking that this was another new trick thought up by the Slytherin snakes. But soon, their eyes will pop out. Because they saw the little snake stopped in front of a fruit oil painting, which made them feel nervous. The kitchen of Hogwarts has always been regarded as their own territory by Hufflepuff. After all, who can tell others about the delicious food in the kitchen? The thing that worried the little badgers the most happened, and Ryan scratched the single pear with his hand. The pear started to giggle, and then turned into a green handle. Ryan pulled the handle, opened the door and walked in. After witnessing all this, the little badgers began to panic and ran into the Hufflepuff lounge, wanting to share the terrifying news with their friends. When Ryan walked in, he was seen by the house elves. However, after seeing the unique decoration of Slytherin house on Ryan's school uniform, the elves began to calm down. Almost a minute later, an older house elf was elected. First. Sir, may I ask, what can Bella do for you? The elf had a deep groove on his face, and his skin was loose, looking like a mangy dog. It's getting old. Bring me some dessert. I didn't get the dessert tonight. Thank you. Ryan said politely. Tonight, because of Beaver and Chris, he left without a bite of dessert. No. You don't have to be so polite, sir. Oh, I'll prepare it for you right away. With that, Bella left. It can be seen that it is a little afraid of Ryan, or it is afraid of the decorations on Ryan that are unique to Slytherin. Please follow me, sir. Leaving you standing here waiting is not something a good house elf would tolerate. Another house elf appeared in front of Ryan, and then brought Ryan to a dining table. A table identical to the Slytherin table in the dining room. After a while, several exquisite and delicious desserts were served, as well as a cup of sweet and rich black tea. Thank you very much. Ryan thanked the house elf who brought the dessert. No thanks, these are what we should do. After saying that, the elf left quickly. These desserts all looked good and smelled rich and sweet, except for the pudding filled with maple syrup. The thick syrup reminded Ryan of the slug that flew into Malfoy's face. Sitting at the table, Ryan was thinking about something while eating. He found that the basic education at Hogwarts was very useful to him now, but when he got to a higher grade, there would probably be nothing that Hogwarts could teach him. Reen has mastered those spells. Maybe dropping out of school is a good choice. It seems that the big guys drop out of school midway. For example, the Dark Lord and Old Man Newt. Alas, let's wait until then, when the Dark Lord has already begun to wreak havoc. I wonder what the wizard's soul will look like after it is purified into a soul sun? There is not a soul sun left in Ryan's pocket, but fortunately, he is now strong enough to protect himself, and he no longer has the same desire to improve himself as before. Thank you very much for your hospitality. I'll leave first if I have something else to do. Ryan shouted into the open space next to the table, knowing the house elves could hear him. Then he left without any hesitation. After Ryan left, the elves appeared in the kitchen one after another. "Doesn't this gentleman look like a bad guy?" an elf whispered. But then the elf was punched hard by the elf next to him. "Damn it, you dare to criticize the master we are supposed to serve behind our back!" the beating elf yelled. The little elf that was knocked to the ground was immediately punched and kicked by different people of its kind, and the last glimmer of hope in his heart was extinguished. After Ryan left the kitchen, he returned to the Slytherin common room. In the lounge, the little wizards were sitting on the sofa chatting. Every little wizard who was born in the 28 Holy Pure Blood family was surrounded by 2 or 3 little wizards. After Ryan came in, these people didn't even look at Ryan. Ryan had no intention of paying attention to these people. In his opinion, family and money were nothing, and only his own strength was real. After washing up, Ryan lay on the bed and started reading the Book of 10,000 Dermas. This time the Book of All Laws became a book about time, and Ryan was no longer satisfied with the spell that could make him go back 1 hour. Chapter 33. Malfoy did not go back to his dormitory to sleep that night, probably because he was afraid that Ryan would cast an unforgivable curse on him while he was sleeping at night, or perhaps because he disliked Ryan's Muggle origin. But no matter what, Ryan got a dormitory of his own. This was completely confirmed the next morning when Malfoy came to pack his luggage. Use the levitating spell to move the bed that originally belonged to Malfoy to the corner, and then put his luggage on it. The whole dormitory instantly became a large space. As for what to do if Malfoy wants to come back, that is not within the scope of Ryan's consideration. But in addition, Ryan also needs a secret base known only to himself to conduct some experiments that are not visible to the light. It's better to do it step by step. Ryan smiled at the corner of his mouth. Malfoy moving away was a great thing for Ryan. Although Ryan wanted to transform this dormitory according to his own wishes, there was not much time left before class started. After washing up quickly, I went upstairs to the restaurant and ate a simple sandwich before arriving at the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. However, when he saw the sign for the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, he suddenly realized that he seemed to have forgotten something. But he couldn't remember what he had forgotten for a while, so he had to think about it for the time being. There were not many seats left in the classroom at this time, and only the last row was empty. This class was held together with Hufflepuff, but the young wizards from the 2 houses seemed to have the same hobby this time, vying to sit in the front. Ryan sat in a corner of the last row, minding his own business. Although there are still a few empty seats in the front row, there is a small group next to them, so it is inevitable to feel uncomfortable sitting there. After sitting down, Ryan took out the Black Magic Self-Defense Guide and placed it on the table. Some of the magic recorded in this book is still very useful in Ryan's opinion, and it is enough to deal with more common situations. Moreover, he had finished studying this book a long time ago. Most of the magic can be found in the books left by the Death Eaters. It seems that they are relatively versatile spells. I don't know how Professor Quirrell is doing this year. I heard that Professor Wenhua last year ended up in St. Goman's Hospital for magical injuries and maladies. He was in a coma and hasn't woken up yet. By the way, the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor from the year before last was also at St. Mungo's, right? Yes, I heard that we are still in the same ward as Professor Wenhua. No way. There are only 3 patients in one room. Is it such a coincidence? The remaining one also used to be a Defense Against the Dark Arts professor in the school, right? Have you heard all this? Hey? Is it true? Yes, the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts 4 years ago was a battle-experienced orator. However, before the final exam, he suddenly fell down the stairs and hit his head. Now he is lying in the hospital like Professor Wenhua. This. Bang. Ryan slammed the table, and he finally remembered what he had forgotten. Isn't this unfortunate Professor Quirrell possessed by Voldemort? His whole body smells like garlic. Ryan suddenly thought of the sandwich he had hurriedly stuffed into his mouth that morning. If I could do it over again, I would never eat that sandwich. Ryan thought so. Almost 3 minutes later, Professor Quirrell appeared with his unique scent. It was a very strong smell of garlic, really smellier than the smelly socks that Mrs. Love next door had just taken off. Although Ryan was sitting in the last row, the smell still made him unbearable. Hello everyone, I am, your Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts this year. Hey! Hey! Professor Quirrell stood on the podium and stammered. But none of the little wizards below wanted to listen to him. This indescribable smell had completely occupied the minds of the little wizards. Even Ryan, who was sitting in the last row, felt a little uncomfortable at this time. The sandwich he had eaten in the morning was tumbling in his stomach, and an uncomfortable feeling filled his head. No, I can't bear it anymore. Ryan really couldn't stand the smell, but he had no choice but to endure it. However, Ryan suddenly remembered that he seemed to have learned the spell to freshen the air, but he couldn't remember it for a while. At this time, Ryan realized that he had learned too many magic spells, but he had not used them much. In the end, Ryan successfully cast an air freshening spell on himself and got rid of the biochemical attack from Professor Quirrell. But the rest of the little wizards didn't feel so good. They could only rely on patience to get through this long lesson. I believe they will find a way to solve this matter before the next class. After the defense against the dark arts class, it was Professor McGonagall's transfiguration class. This is the course that little wizards look forward to the most. Everyone wants to turn a piece of wood into a frog or turn a piece of grass into a sharp sword with a wave of his hand. However, the little wizards of Slytherin and Hufflepuff were not in the mood to cheer at this time. They stood in the corridor outside the defense against the dark arts classroom, breathing heavily as if the air was something sweet. The little wizards coming and going around looked at the new students and pointed with some curiosity. But no one went to explain anything to them, because they couldn't go to the defense against the dark arts class without being prepared. This is the most tacit cooperation between Hufflepuff and Slytherin. After taking a breath for a while, the little wizards left, because there was not much time left before the transfiguration class. Ryan came to the transfiguration classroom early. After all, he was not affected at all. Good morning, Professor McGonagall. After saying hello to the cat on the podium, Ryan found a seat slightly forward and sat down. Professor McGonagall nodded to Ryan in return, and then continued to sit on the podium waiting for the arrival of the little wizards. Hurry, hurry, I hope Professor McGonagall hasn't arrived yet. Don't squeeze me. There was a sudden noise outside, and then a group of little wizards appeared in front of the classroom door. Hey, luckily I caught up. A little wizard put his hands on his knees and expressed what all the little wizards felt. There was no crowding, and the little wizards entered the classroom in an orderly manner. The cat on the podium nodded happily. After everyone sat down, Professor McGonagall transformed from a cat into a human in the astonished eyes of all the little wizards in the audience. Chapter 34. In that transfiguration class, the little wizards didn't have a chance to touch the wand, because Professor McGonagall was explaining some knowledge points throughout the whole process. The little wizards were a little discouraged, and their enthusiasm for entering the magical world quickly faded. After all, they come to school for the gorgeous and profound magic, not for sitting in the classroom and taking notes. Professor McGonagall also noticed the changes in the emotions of the little wizards below, but there was nothing that could be done about it. After all, only by laying a solid foundation could we go further. But what pleased Professor McGonagall was that Ryan was also taking notes seriously. Although Ryan cast the unforgivable curse in front of her twice in a row, Professor McGonagall still believed that this was just because Ryan had not received education. After all, you can't expect a child who was orphaned at the age of 4 to survive in the darkness of Clear Street relying on propriety, justice, and integrity. This is the idea that Professor McGonagall came up with after specifically learning about the situation on Clear Street. Ryan felt that time passed very quickly, while the other little wizards felt that time passed very slowly. However, this is only one person's subjective feeling. Objectively, the flow rate of time does not differ from person to person. So the transfiguration class is over. Is this really magic? A young wizard from the Muggle world and his friends were complaining. I think so too. You must always be firm and determined. Ryan didn't listen to the next words. All he was thinking about now was to have a happy meal. The restaurant was particularly lively today, and the little wizards of Slytherin and Hufflepuff were pulling their friends to complain crazily about the disgusting garlic smell of Professor Quirrell. But after the table was filled with delicious food, the two young wizards from the academy shut their mouths. No one wants to be reminded of that taste while eating. After lunch, Ryan went back to his dormitory to rest for a while. There was only one class in the afternoon, and after finishing it, Ryan went into the library. Professor Snape didn't give you any trouble yesterday, did he? Hermione asked secretly. Ryan raised his head, looked at Hermione and said, "Fortunately, we just had to deal with the horned slug. But to be honest, that thing is really disgusting." You. Malfoy and I. Hermione obviously didn't expect that the two of them would be punished together, and asked unexpectedly, "Aren't you afraid that you two will fight again?" "That's Snape's office. When you were in Diagon Alley, you pulled out your wand and tried to cast the death curse." Hermione rolled her eyes at Ryan. "That's Professor McGonagall. Maybe I didn't care about this at the time." Ryan felt a little emotional at this time. Looking at Hermione's puzzled face, Ryan continued, "I still had some abilities at that time. Even if I cast the death curse and was wanted, I was sure to escape. The world is so big, I can always find a place to hide. It's just that now I'm avoiding the Ministry of Magic, whereas before I was avoiding those gangsters, so it's no big deal." Only then did Hermione realize that Ryan's childhood was different from hers. All this time, Ryan's politeness made her choose to forget Ryan's childhood. "Sorry." For some reason, Hermione wanted to apologize right now. "It doesn't matter." Ryan just smiled. He didn't care about his miserable childhood. What's more, that was just Ryan's childhood. "By the way, do you still want to go to Professor Snape's place to receive punishment tonight?" Then Hermione suddenly realized that she seemed to have asked a stupid question. Yesterday Snape said he would accept a month's punishment, but today he asked if he still needed to go. "No need to go today." "At astronomy class." "Oh." The little girl seemed to be particularly interesting today, which made Ryan full of interest, and he couldn't help but start looking at Hermione up and down. "What are you looking at?" Hermione looked a little embarrassed by Ryan and asked with a blush. "Of course I'm looking at a pretty girl." Hermione's face turned even redder at this time, and the little girl lowered her head. After that, no matter how Ryan talked to her, Hermione stopped paying attention to Ryan. In the evening, Ryan took an uninteresting astronomy lesson. Well, watching the stars for an hour and recording their movements. But the telescope for looking at the stars sparked Ryan's idea. To be honest, from the outside, you may not imagine that such a small brass telescope can see the stars in the sky clearly. But it actually did it. So after the astronomy class, Ryan's original brass telescope became a pile of parts. What a delicate structure and superb spell-casting skills! Ryan kept sighing. In fact, it's not complicated at all. It just uses magic to increase the intensity of light entering the astronomical telescope, and then uses magic to make it clearer. Generally speaking, a brass telescope can last about 20 years. After understanding the principle and structure of the brass telescope, Ryan summoned Pace. After smoothing Pace's feathers and feeding him some owl nuts, Ryan put a gold galleon into the small pocket on Pace's paw. "Pace, help me go to Diagon Alley and buy another telescope," Ryan said. Pace nodded to express his understanding, and then flew out of the owl-specific tube. At the same time, this is also the ventilation pipe used in the Slytherin common room. After watching Pace disappear, Ryan sat at the desk next to him. He now needs to think carefully about his own spells. Today's events gave him a wake-up call. He now has so many spells at his disposal that he doesn't know which spell to use first when something happens. It's like L'Hopitat's law or Taylor's formula, which one would you choose? Sometimes it's really hard to make a choice. Therefore, Ryan now needs to carefully understand the circumstances under which each spell can be used to exert its maximum power. Taking this opportunity, Ryan also wanted to sort out what he had learned. The things that Ryan knows now are very messy, including the black magic left by the Death Eaters, the basic spells of several civilizations in the Book of Laws, the forbidden spells, and some miscellaneous spells. Now I need to add the white magic that I am learning. Some magic systems also have conflicting aspects. This is a huge project, and Ryan doesn't expect to be able to sort it out in one day. He is just recalling the names and effects of the spells he has mastered. Hey! Detection, such a useful spell, I forgot about it. Healing? It's useless. It wastes magic power and the effect is not good. Ryan completely lost track of time as he wrote. Fortunately, Malfoy had moved out. Chapter 35. Time slowly came to Saturday, which was the day that Ryan and Hermione made an appointment to learn Latin together. "Zell, Professor Dumbledore has something to ask you. Go to the 3rd floor now and find 2 stone statues. From there you can enter the principal's office. By the way, today's password is, Rock Sugar Lemonade." Halfway to the library, Ryan met Snape. "Okay, Professor Snape." Although he didn't know what Dumbledore wanted from him, Ryan nodded. Seeing that Ryan already knew it, Snape did not intend to stay here any longer. But before Snape turned and left, he took a long look at Hermione and Ryan. "Sorry, Hermione, it seems that there may not be much time to study today. Shall we continue tomorrow?" Ryan said after seeing Snape completely walking away. "Okay, Ryan. If Professor Dumbledore is looking for you, go there quickly and don't waste time." Hermione began to urge Ryan. In the little girl's opinion, the principal must have something to do with Ryan. This was also true. At this time, besides Dumbledore, there was one other person in the principal's room. Lucius Malfoy. Draco Malfoy's father. "Albus, can you guarantee that he will not kill the curse? Do you have to wait until he makes a big mistake before taking measures?" Lucius stood in the principal's room and shouted loudly. But Dumbledore was concentrating on selecting the beans from the box of braised beans. "What?" As if realizing what Lucius had said, Dumbledore raised his head, his blue eyes full of doubts. "Damn it, can't you put down your snacks first? What he cast this time was a fake life-killing curse. Can you guarantee that he won't cast a real one next time?" As if he felt the contempt from Dumbledore, Lucius was now a little irritable. "I do not think he can continue to stay at Hogwarts. For the honor of this school and the safety of all children, I recommend that he be imprisoned in Azkaban." Before Dumbledore could speak, Lucius continued. "He's just a child, Lucius, and it was Draco who insulted others first." "Mudblood, what an insult!" Dumbledore's tone remained unchanged, still so calm. "But you shouldn't use the death curse to scare people. If it was a real Kedavra, do you think Draco would still be running around the school right now?" At this time, there was a knock on the door of the principal's office. "Ha, Ryan, come in quickly." Dumbledore sensed that it was Ryan who knocked on the door, and smiled and greeted Ryan to come in. After hearing Dumbledore's permission, Ryan walked into the principal's office and closed the door behind him. "You must be Ryan Zell. I heard about you. The death curse you fired at the opening ceremony was really shocking." Before Ryan could reach Dumbledore's desk, Lucius rushed forward impatiently and stretched out his hand. Ryan glanced at Lucius strangely, but his mind was thinking about who this person was. However, he was not rude and asked people to wait. He also stretched out his hand and shook it. "Lucius Malfoy." Lucius spoke. At this moment, Ryan understood that this was a fight with the younger one, and the older one was here. "You also know my name, Lucius Malfoy. I have also heard that you were very majestic when you were a Death Eater." Ryan had a mocking smile on his lips and said in the same tone as Lucius. "Sorry, I was just controlled by the mysterious man with magic at that time. That was not my intention. I have already stated this to the Ministry of Magic after the war, and the fact that I am standing here now is proof of my innocence. Isn't it?" Lucius took his hand out, paused, and continued, "But it's you who actually cast the death curse in public. It seems that Azkaban is a very suitable place for you. Why is this not what I see?" "Mr. Malfoy." Dumbledore watched the two fighting each other with interest, occasionally throwing one or two multi-flavor beans into his mouth. "I would like to hear the details." Lucius pretended to be very interested. Ryan laughed ha-ha twice, full of ridicule, and then took out a piece of paper from his seamless stretch pocket and handed it to Lucius. Lucius looked confused and glanced at Ryan strangely, but he still took it. After a cursory look, Lucius's expression turned ugly. The hand holding the paper began to slowly tighten, and the paper also became wrinkled. "Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, Lucius, this kid Ryan seems to be living in a Death Eater stronghold." Dumbledore delivered the final blow. "By the way, I have to thank Mr. Malfoy for the chair he made for Voldemort. I sold it to a second-hand dealer and made £20,000. You know, I never had more than one in my pocket before that. Here are the pounds." Lucius was looking at Dumbledore in disbelief. He realized that Dumbledore was setting a trap for him. "I just don't know if what this kid is holding is real." Lucius glared at Ryan fiercely and said through gritted teeth, "You're welcome, I'll be happy if I can help you. Sorry, I remembered that I have a meeting to hold later, so I'll take my leave now." Lucius lifted his cane, adjusted his hat, and said. He planned to reveal the matter now, he didn't dare to gamble. If the bet wins, Dumbledore's presence will only cause Ryan some pain. If the bet fails, Lucius believes that the remaining pure-blood families will not miss this good opportunity to cannibalize the Malfoy family. "Mr. Malfoy, Malfoy's calling me a mudblood is not over yet. He insulted me so much. Shouldn't you give me some compensation to comfort my injured heart? Anyway, he has already threatened Lucius, so that's not bad. Kindness to one's enemies is cruelty to oneself. You are threatening me. Lucius said every word. He was furious now. After so many years in the magical world, Lucius never thought that he would be threatened by a young wizard who had just entered school. Yes, Mr. Malfoy. Ryan admitted generously. Lucius felt as if something was stuck in his chest. He waited for a long time before saying, "Then what do you want?" 5 magic crystals. Why don't you go and grab it? As soon as Ryan finished speaking, Lucius roared. Cough cough cough. Dumbledore also coughed. He did want Ryan to ask for compensation, but he didn't expect Ryan to be so loud when he opened his mouth. Chapter 36. Sorry, I just ate a chili-flavored multi-flavor bean. You continue and ignore me, an old man. Seeing the two of them thinking about themselves at the same time, Dumbledore explained. However, neither Ryan nor Malfoy paid attention, and then started discussing Ryan's mental compensation. In the end, Malfoy gritted his teeth and Ryan smiled happily, settling on 3 magic crystals. A magic crystal is a magical stone that is usually alchemically fixed to a magical item to prolong its use. Okay, Ryan. Now that everyone else has left, I thought, we should talk. Dumbledore stuffed the box of braised beans into the drawer, then crossed his hands and placed them on the table. His sky-blue eyes behind his glasses looked directly at Ryan. Oh, is that your wand? Dumbledore saw Ryan's wand emerging from his clothes. Yes, Professor. Ryan had no intention of taking it out. I heard about that, and I don't blame you. Elderberry, Thestral's tail hair, 13 inches. Haha, it sounds more like the Deathly Hallows than the Elder Wand. Dumbledore said with a smile. Ryan didn't react, just looked at Dumbledore. Okay, young people just don't have much patience. Ryan, do you know why I defeated Grindelwald and Voldemort, but Lucius still dares to yell at me? Because I follow the rules, Ryan. Rules are something that everyone must abide by, and only within the rules. Then, Ryan sat there and listened to Dumbledore for half an hour. The only impression that Ryan had for half an hour was that the portrait behind Dumbledore disappeared within a minute of Dumbledore speaking. Fawkes also flashed a flash of fire and disappeared immediately. Okay, Ryan, go enjoy your lunch. It's not a gentleman to worry a beautiful lady for too long. Dumbledore finally stopped his preaching and said this to Ryan, not forgetting to wink at Ryan. Okay. Goodbye, Professor Dumbledore. Ryan covered his forehead, feeling a little dazed. Have a nice weekend, Ryan. Same to you, Professor Dumbledore. The restaurant is extremely busy today, after all, it is the first weekend of the new semester. The little wizards who had just entered school were full of curiosity about this 1000-year-old magic castle, so they started a journey of exploration during this break. This has nothing to do with the academy. After all, as long as we are human, we have curiosity. A morning of exploration gave these little wizards a new understanding of this magic school. At the same time, it also makes their stomachs feel empty. And I don't know if today is the first weekend, but lunch looks much richer than usual. Hermione saw Ryan the first time he entered the restaurant. Faced with Hermione's worried and questioning eyes, Ryan smiled in response. The originally lively atmosphere in Slytherin fell silent due to the arrival of Ryan. This morning, some young wizards who got up early saw the arrival of Lucius Malfoy, so everyone speculated that Ryan must be unlucky this time. Malfoy saw Ryan coming and started to laugh secretly. Today's lunch was really good. It's a pity that some people can only have this last meal. Malfoy said loudly to Crabbe. Yes, yes. Gore echoed from the side very doggedly. Ryan turned a deaf ear, not wanting to pay attention to Malfoy's ridicule. If you don't look at the monk's face, at least look at the magic crystal's face. Before you get the things, it's better to let him give in. After he gets the things, Ryan doesn't mind ordering more. After simply filling his stomach, Ryan left the restaurant, along with Hermione. Look at her anxious look, she doesn't look like a Gryffindor. Ron said to Harry beside him. Harry looked at Hermione's retreating back. Although he felt something was wrong, he couldn't say anything and could only smile at Ron. Is there nothing wrong with you? I heard them all saying that you are going to be expelled. Even going to Azkaban. As soon as Hermione left the restaurant, she caught Ryan and talked for a while. Hermione, relax, Professor Dumbledore won't fire me. Ryan said with a smile, and touched the little girl's head. How is this possible? Ryan, are you trying to comfort me? Hermione asked eagerly, looking at Ryan, even forgetting the hand on her head. If you don't believe me, you should at least believe Professor Dumbledore, right? Ryan said, looking into Hermione's eyes. Hermione thought for a moment and nodded. This left Ryan speechless for a while. Why do people always believe in Dumbledore so much? Let's go to the library. Ryan said. Hermione nodded and followed Ryan upstairs. Thanks to Ryan's photographic memory, he learned Latin very quickly, which surprised Hermione. Ryan, you are such a genius. Hermione sighed sincerely. She originally thought she was already great, but after meeting Ryan, she realized that there are people outside the world. Ryan accepted Hermione's praise with a smile. At night, Ryan still came to Snape's office to receive punishment. During this week, Snape had Ryan and Malfoy handle 3 or 4 potions. This greatly improved Ryan's ability to handle potions, making Ryan want to receive more punishments. You need to collect some thick Belgian berry juice today, a large bottle. As he said that, Snape took an almost 1-liter jar and placed it on the console. This strong berry has a unique, nauseating smell and is one of the ingredients that potions masters are reluctant to deal with. But thanks to Snape, I've dealt with even more disgusting things than this week. This kind of scene is trivial. Ryan and Malfoy's expressions remained unchanged as they quickly processed the pile of berries. The two of them didn't say a word, because they had spoken before and were given an extra half-hour of confinement by Snape. Very well, Malfoy, you can go back. Zell will stay for a while. Snape's sallow face showed no expression. Malfoy smiled secretly at Ryan, then walked away with his head held high. Goyle and Crabbe were still waiting for him outside the door. What do you want, Professor Snape? Ryan asked. I see that you have been very close to that Gryffindor recently. I think you should stay away from her. After all, you are a Slytherin. Thanks for tipping me 500 book coins when I encounter a flaw, I really appreciate it. Chapter 37. And then watch her hide in the arms of another Gryffindor like you? And you can only curl up in the quilt and moan helplessly like a wretch in the middle of the night. Ryan's face, there was no expression on his face, as if he was stating a fact. Snape's empty eyes finally showed ups and downs. He opened his mouth slightly, stood up, and clenched his hands tightly. But he finally sat down and loosened his clenched fists. You can go back now, Zell. Snape's voice was hoarse, and his eyes were staring ahead blankly. I have a deal, do you want to hear it? Ryan walked to Snape's desk and stared at the tragic professor. However, Snape did not react. He just sat in his chair and continued to grade the potions homework handed in by the senior students. There is a story in the Tales of Beedle the Bard. It says that there were 3 brothers who met death after crossing the river. Ryan slowly walked back and forth in Snape's office. Move around. Death was impressed by their superb magic, so he thought they could win a prize from him. The boss wanted an extremely powerful wand, so Death cut off a branch from an elder tree by the river and made it into a wand. That's the Elder Wand. The second brother wanted to have the power to resurrect the dead because he thought it would shame Death, so Death picked up a stone from the ground and handed it to him. This was the resurrection stone. The third child is very smart. He wanted to hide outside the jurisdiction of the God of Death, but the God of Death had no choice but to give him an invisibility cloak, which is the legendary invisibility cloak. Snape stopped changing his homework at this time. He raised his head and looked at Ryan, as if he was looking at a clown. Has our warrior Zell, who dared to cast the death curse at the school opening ceremony, also started to believe these children's bedtime stories? Snape said haha with a smile, and continued, if I were you, I would read some useful books instead of studying a collection of stories. Because those books can increase your knowledge. Knowledge, and the collection of stories makes you dumber than a troll. Snape paused after speaking, then picked up the quill, dipped it in the ink bottle, and continued correcting his homework. Ryan didn't care about Snape's performance, because it was really hard for ordinary people to believe it. There is a book called Magic Potion Refining, From Beginner to Mastery in the second row on the right side of the library entrance and the third row in the middle of the bookshelf. You can go and read it. I think it will make you look more knowledgeable. People outside the province say that the young wizard born in Slytherin has not learned even 1/10 of the skills of his dean. Ryan was about to continue speaking, but was interrupted by Snape. This actually made Ryan stand there, not knowing what to do. As soon as Snape said this, the original atmosphere was gone. "What are you still doing here? Get out!" Snape yelled when he saw Ryan still standing there. "Professor, do you think the Deathly Hallows don't exist?" Snape's hand paused slightly, and a drop of ink fell from the quill, instantly saturating a large area of text. "I don't want to hear any more of your stupid remarks." Snape waved his hand impatiently. The invisibility cloak passed down by the Potter family, and the Elder Wand in Professor Dumbledore's hand. "These all exist. Couldn't the last Deathly Hallows exist?" Ryan said to himself, and after finishing speaking, he started to walk out the door. "Come back!" Snape called him as Ryan expected. Turning around, he was faced with Snape's knife-like eyes. Gaunt's house. Ryan lived up to Snape's expectations and spit out a place name. Snape, not doubting his presence, stood up and walked out. For him now, even if this is a scam, as long as there is a glimmer of hope, he still wants to try it. Maybe it would make him feel better. Locked behind closed doors. A spell hit the door of Snape's office, and the door closed with a creak. Without saying a word, Snape drew his wand and turned around to point at Ryan. Armor for protection. Ryan subconsciously cast an armor spell on himself. Then I felt unsafe, so I added a magic shield to myself, which was a spell from the Book of All Laws. "Professor Snape, please don't worry. You will only lose your life by being so reckless now." Ryan waved his hand, signaling Snape to calm down. At this time, Snape also realized that his actions just now were somewhat inappropriate, so he began to use occlumency to suppress his emotions. Seeing Snape put away his wand, Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to have a fight with Snape. Ever heard of Horcruxes? Ryan's words made Snape's pupil shrink, and occlumency was instantly broken. Snape subconsciously touched his left arm, then suddenly realized something and quickly put his right hand down. "It seems you have guessed it," Ryan said with a smile. Snape still looked so indifferent, but there was a somewhat complicated expression in his eyes. "He's not dead," Snape said. As if these words exhausted all his strength, Snape slumped in his chair after finishing speaking. "Maybe we can cooperate, Professor," I said. "This is a deal." Ryan smiled and sat in front of Snape. He now took the initiative. Snape looked at the smiling face and suddenly felt unhappy. "Where do you know so much, and aren't you afraid that I will tell Professor Dumbledore?" Snape growled. "There is only one resurrection stone, Professor." "Yes, there is only one resurrection stone, and no one can guarantee that the resurrection stone can resurrect people indefinitely. And everyone has someone they want to resurrect, and Snape happens to know who Dumbledore wants to resurrect the most." At the same time, Snape also knew that once he learned of the existence of the Resurrection Stone, the old man would definitely unleash tremendous power to seize the Resurrection Stone. "What's the deal?" Snape thought for a while and finally agreed. Although he can now throw down his sleeves and go it alone, who can guarantee that Ryan will not run up to Dumbledore and have the conversation again? Ryan was right, there was only one Resurrection Stone. Snape didn't dare to gamble. "I need you to give me special combat training and Voldemort's soul left in the Resurrection Stone. Do you have a way to deal with the mysterious man's remnant soul? You must know that he is the Dark Lord." Snape frowned, not knowing whether it was because Ryan said Voldemort or because Ryan actually had the ability to deal with Voldemort's soul. Chapter 38. "I need a little time to prepare, and in the meantime I hope you don't get carried away," Ryan warned. He didn't want Snape to rush over when his head got hot. "Why, you want to go too? I don't have time to be your nanny." Snape didn't want Ryan to follow him at all. He had a few good points and two shortcomings that would definitely attract Dumbledore's attention. Now Snape just wanted to resurrect his Lily quietly and quietly. "I think you should at least prepare some magic recovery potion. After all, it is something left by the Dark Lord." Ryan did not answer Snape. After finishing speaking, Ryan left Snape's office. "Curfew is coming soon, and if you don't leave, you'll have to wait a while longer." Snape looked at the door that was closed by Ryan, and kept tapping his fingers on the table. But soon, he stood up and walked to a small room behind the office. This is Snape's exclusive pharmacy. He needs to go all out to prepare some potions for the upcoming trip to snatch the Resurrection Stone. "No one can take you away this time, Lily." Snape kept mumbling, but the amount of potion put into the cauldron was not bad at all. On the other side, Ryan returned to the Slytherin lounge after coming out of Snape's office. As soon as Ryan entered the Slytherin lounge, he found that all the little wizards were staring at him blankly. However, someone soon came up and took Ryan's right hand. "Hello, my name is Brick, 4th grade, from the Carlo family. Nice to meet you, Ryan," he said, shaking Ryan's hand twice. Ryan looked at the handsome blonde man in front of him with curiosity, wondering what happened to cause such a huge change in everyone's attitude towards him. But Brick didn't say anything, and after getting to know each other, he turned around and left. Next up is a little witch from the Rozier family. Then there was a wizard from the Traverse family. Ryan just stood at the door of the Slytherin common room with a confused look on his face and got to know all the little wizards in Slytherin. The last person to come was Malfoy, holding a small bag in his hand, which made jingling sounds as he walked. Malfoy walked up to Ryan, threw the bag into Ryan's hand and ran away. Ryan touched the bag, opened it, and found that it was the compensation given by old Malfoy this morning. At this moment, Ryan finally understood why Slytherin's little wizards were acting like this today. After shaking the crystal in the bag, Ryan didn't take today's matter to heart. "If you really want to make friends, would you talk at the door of the common room? Can you say a few words and then leave?" However, these 3 crystals from old Malfoy came in time, especially when Ryan was about to go to Gaunt's old house. Ryan stuffed the crystal into his pocket. It was better not to leave such valuable things in the dormitory. "But, should we put 2 protective magic circles at the door?" Ryan said, sitting on the bed and looking at the door of his dormitory. In the end, Ryan only cast 2 alarm spells, one to remind him that someone had entered his dormitory, and the other to leave a magic mark on the intruder so that he could find out who the intruder was. After briefly washing up, Ryan sat at the desk and continued to sort out his magic. In addition, he also needs to determine the magic props that need to be prepared. Originally, Ryan only planned to fix some protective magic circles on his school uniform and some common clothes, but now that he has 3 more magic crystals in his hand, the options are much wider. Decorations such as bracelets and necklaces can also be made. In the next few days, whenever he had free time, Ryan would hide in his dormitory and work. "And the price is? What have you been busy with these past few days? Why can't you see your people?" Hermione blocked Ryan, who wanted to go back to the dormitory, and asked viciously. Ryan looked at the person in front of him, then turned to look at the little wizards around him who were pointing at this place, and said, "Let's talk in another place." The little girl looked around and realized that this was not the place to talk, so she nodded and followed Ryan. The 2 came to the same path as last time. This place is remote enough that no single young wizard would come here to seek suffering, and the young wizards who come here generally don't care about others. "Okay, now can you tell me what you have been doing recently? You always run away in a hurry after eating, and you don't even have time to say a few words." Hermione kept complaining. But this is normal. Hermione has only entered the magical world for less than a week, and she is not familiar with the surroundings yet. Her relationship with the other little wizards in the dormitory is not very good. It is rare to have a friend like Ryan, and she has been ignoring her these past few days, so she is inevitably a little unhappy. "I've been busy lately," Ryan said. But seeing Hermione's face getting worse and worse, Ryan quickly added, "It's a big thing, but I can't tell you the details." "Sorry, Hermione. Am I an outsider, Ryan? Is there anything you can't tell me?" The little girl felt aggrieved. After all, she regarded him as a friend. "Hermione, I'm telling you, things will get more complicated. However, maybe you can have some free time now that you're done." Snort. Hermione snorted, and silence fell between them. "Ryan, I want to improve my strength." After a long time, Hermione spoke, breaking the silence between the 2. "There is a book called Magic Potion Refining, from Beginner to Mastery, in the 2nd row on the right side of the library entrance and in the 2nd row of the bookshelf in the middle of the 3rd row. This book is good, you can go and read it first." "How do you know? Have you seen it?" Hermione was a little surprised. It had only been a week since school started, and she hadn't even browsed the bookshelves in the library. Ryan already knew which book was better. "I haven't seen it. Professor Snape recommended it. I think he won't lie to others." Ryan found a double chair and sat down. Hermione also sat down. "Then I'll go take a look later," the little girl replied, and then the 2 fell into silence again. After a while, Hermione stood up and said with a smile, "Let's go, I don't dare to take you too long, lest I hinder you from doing big things." "Ah, yes, I have done big things." The two of them gradually walked away while playing. After entering the foyer, the two separated one by one. After entering the Slytherin common room, Ryan clearly felt how special the little Slytherin wizard was today. The little wizards, especially the freshmen, gathered together and talked about something lively, with excitement on everyone's face. Chapter 39. After Ryan looked at the bulletin board, he finally understood why the little wizards were so happy. There will be a flying lesson tomorrow. Flying is something that all humans look forward to. Although the little wizards were having a lively discussion, Ryan had no intention of joining in. The props he made are almost finished, and he can basically accompany Snape to Gaunt's old house this weekend. What Ryan was making was a cloak. It didn't need to be good, it just needed to be able to handle Saturday's situation. The cloak was purchased in Diagon Alley at the beginning of school. Ryan cast a defensive spell on it, which could completely block spell damage up to the upper limit. But Ryan thought for a moment and cast a short-distance teleportation spell on the cloak. Only when using this spell, you need to send a magic crystal to shatter. Ryan placed a crystal at the button of the cloak, and the other two crystals were placed inside the cloak on both sides of his body. The three crystals provide energy together, so the defensive power of this cloak will be greatly improved. After carefully placing the last crystal, Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. This cloak is the first magical equipment that Ryan made by himself. Ryan stood up, put on his cloak, looked around, and felt pretty good. But, how to test it? You can't hit yourself. Forget it, let's try it with Professor Snape tomorrow. After wearing it and feeling it for a while, Ryan put the cloak away. Time flies so fast, the flying lesson that the little wizards are most looking forward to has just arrived. Flying lessons are held on the grass outside Hogwarts Castle. When the little wizards came to the flying lesson venue, there were 2 rows of brooms neatly placed on the ground. "Hell, it's an antique like Comet 180. Malfoy spoke the moment he saw the broom. "The brooms I ride on at home are better than this one. I'm really worried about whether I'll fall halfway through the sky." Malfoy saw a little wizard looking this way, so he continued. Ryan walked over to a broom and looked at it carefully. The wooden handle at the front of the broom was very smooth to the touch, but the rest of it looked a little burr. The broom tip at the tail is also sparse, like a middle-aged man's hair that is no longer as thick as before. "Doo-doo. Doo-doo." Before Ryan could look at it for long, there was a whistle in his ears. "Okay, everyone, stand next to the brooms. Gryffindors stand in 1 row, and Slytherins stand in 1 row. Children, get moving." Mrs. Huochi glanced at the little wizards, and then said loudly. After hearing this, the little wizards who were originally a little afraid of Mrs. Huochi immediately rushed to the broom. After all, everyone wanted to choose a good-looking broom. These brooms look old, after all. Ryan didn't mind and just found a broom. After all the little wizards stood still, Mrs. Huochi began to explain the essentials of flying. "First, we need to open our hands, palms down, and then shout loudly and emotionally, 'Up!' After Mrs. Huochi finished speaking, she glanced at the little wizards with eagle-like eyes. Seeing that they were motionless, Mrs. Huochi said doubtfully, "Children, why don't you move?" After getting Mrs. Huochi permission, the little wizards began to try it. For a while, the sounds on the grass began to fall one after another. Just like in the original novel, Harry succeeded with just 1 shout, and Malfoy succeeded with the second. It took Ryan about 6 or 7 attempts before he succeeded, which is also the talent level of most young wizards. Hermione, who noticed this, was relieved. After all, it only took her 4 times to succeed. After all the little wizards were able to call the brooms from the grass into their hands, Mrs. Hooch began the next step of teaching, which was the preliminary attempt to fly. "Mr. Longbottom, please come down." Neville still flew up uncontrollably. "Destiny." Looking at Neville slowly floating into the sky, Ryan said to himself. Neville suddenly stopped in the air, as if he had control of the broom, which made Mrs. Hooch breathe a slight sigh of relief. However, immediately after, the broom Neville stepped on suddenly went crazy and flew into the distance at a speed that should not appear on this type of broom. "Mr. Longbottom!" Mrs. Hooch shouted. "Curse stop! Curse stop!" Mrs. Huochi kept releasing magic to stop the out-of-control broom, but because the broom was too fast, the magic kept failing. Ryan watched with a smile on Neville's face as he continued to perform various difficult movements over the castle, without any reaction at all. In the end, Neville was sent to the infirmary by Mrs. Hooch, and Malfoy also picked up the memory ball. Everything developed as in the original work. After a fight, Harry grabbed the memory ball, which was then taken away by Professor McGonagall. Ryan knew that Harry had become Gryffindor's seeker. Does anyone know where Mr. Potter went? When Mrs. Hooch came back, she found that one of her students was missing. This frightened Mrs. Hooch, so she sent one of them to the infirmary. Another one disappeared, and the lesson was lost. Harry was called away by Professor McGonagall. Professor. Seeing no one answered, Ron had no choice but to walk out. Although he looked tall, the tone of his voice didn't seem to match his stature. The smile on Malfoy's face froze for a moment, and he suddenly realized that he seemed to have made a mistake just now. Then, he thought about how he seemed to have to go to Snape's office every night to receive punishment. If Snape knew that he had deducted points for Slytherin. Malfoy trembled all over and shook his head, trying to get rid of all those bad thoughts. What's wrong with you, Mr. Malfoy? Are you feeling unwell? Mrs. Hooch was very tired. The first flying lesson of the year was not going well. She couldn't help but look at the little wizard present, and sighed silently in her heart. Such a simple operation is full of problems. When they learn some flying skills in the future, won't half of them have to go to the school hospital? This is truly the worst class I have ever led. Mrs. Hooch thought so. Fortunately, Ron also knew that he couldn't tell about Harry and Malfoy flying into the sky. After reporting it, he stopped talking. This also made Malfoy quietly sigh in relief. After Neville's incident, the little wizards also had a little fear of flying lessons, and they didn't dare to let go too much when flying. This made Mrs. Hooch even more disappointed. Finally, the flying lesson ended in a strange atmosphere. Chapter 40. On Friday night, Snape once again kept Ryan behind. How prepared are you? Snape's face was still expressionless, but Ryan knew that he must be anxious now. If you could, we could go now. Tomorrow. Snape suddenly felt a little nervous at this moment. What would Lily say when she first saw him? Would you blame him? Or just ignore him? Tomorrow. Snape said again, his voice trembling. Ryan nodded. One day on Saturday was enough. Then I'll go first, Professor Snape. You must get enough rest tonight. Snape made no move, just sat in his chair. At night, Snape lay on the bed, rolling around and unable to sleep. Finally, in order to have enough energy to deal with Voldemort's Horcrux tomorrow, Snape drank a bottle of life and death water. Early the next morning, Ryan got up and started preparing his equipment. In fact, there is nothing to prepare: a cloak, a wand and materials for drawing a magic circle. Then Ryan wrote a note and handed it to Pace, who flew in from the ventilation duct. Pace, give it to Hermione after I leave Hogwarts. Ryan stroked Pace's hair and said, go ahead. Perhaps because today is Saturday, there were very few little wizards who came to the restaurant for breakfast, and most of them packed up a lot of food and left. After simply eating something, Ryan stuffed 2 more sandwiches into his arms for lunch. Immediately afterwards, he arrived in front of Snape's office. Dong dong dong. Ryan knocked on the door, but no one answered. Dong dong dong. Bang bang bang. Ryan began to switch from knocking to banging on the door. Still no one answered. No way, Snape ran there by himself? He won't die there, right? Ryan guessed as he stood in front of the door. I always thought that Slytherins were all well-educated people, because well-educated people would never speak ill of others behind their backs. But I think I was wrong. After all, the forest is big and there are all kinds of birds. An eerie voice sounded from behind him, startling Ryan, who was thinking. Seeing Ryan's reaction, Snape's face did not change, but he still laughed haha in his heart. Okay, are you ready? Should we leave? Although Snape said it as a question, Ryan never heard that Snape was asking for his opinion. Then, Snape took out a small bag and handed it to Ryan. There are some potions here that I brewed. Remember to use them when the time comes. After all, you are going out with me. If you don't come back when I come back, there will inevitably be some trouble. Snape is so arrogant. Ryan was not polite and put it away directly. After all, Snape is a wealthy person, so this potion is just a drop in the bucket to Snape. However, Ryan did not delay, and the two of them started walking directly outside Hogwarts. Target Gunter's old house, come here following my apparition wave. As soon as he was out of the range of the Hogwarts anti-apparition curse, Snape couldn't wait to drop a word and disappear instantly. Ryan looked at the furious Snape and opened his mouth at the place where Snape disappeared, but in the end he said nothing. With a wave of the wand, the wave of spells left by Snape passed by. Migration interference. In the woods outside the school, a house elf cast a disruption spell on the disapparition spell that Ryan had released. "BB, go back and report to the master quickly, saying that the target has left the school, and I will look for an opportunity to kill him." One ugly house elf said to another house elf. "Okay, Crow, you have to be careful." BB looked at Crow, nodded, then snapped his fingers and disappeared. BB watched Crow disappear, and he also snapped his fingers and followed the wave of phantom left by Ryan. "Damn it, what the hell is this place?" Ryan couldn't help but cursed as he looked at the large piece of grass in front of him. Looking around, there were no trees, let alone houses. Where is Professor Snape? What happened? Do you want the resurrection stone anymore? Ryan said with some annoyance. Damn, the after effects of apparition are here again. It's such an unpleasant spell. Ryan simply sat on the ground to calm himself down. But I don't know if Snape knew that he was not used to operating yet, so the bag of potions he gave to Ryan actually contained a bottle of awakening potion. Whether it's dizziness caused by illness or the sequelae of a spell, just one bottle will make you recover immediately. Boo! The sound of pulling out the cork is particularly nice. The medicine in the medicine bottle exuded a cool fragrance, and just by smelling it, Ryan felt that his dizzy head felt much better. He brought the medicine bottle to his mouth, tilted his head, and the medicine in the bottle flowed into Ryan's mouth. At this time, changes occurred. A scarlet light suddenly shot out from the void and hit Ryan with lightning speed. Ryan just felt a huge push coming from his back, and his whole body flew forward under the influence of this force. Plop! Ryan's body fell heavily to the ground, but without any hesitation, Ryan quickly stood up and took out his wand. But what was very unfortunate was that there was no one around him. In other words, Ryan couldn't see it. Not good. Ryan thought to himself. His left hand touched the inside of the cloak, but he did not touch the thing he imagined, the magic crystal. The crystal has been broken, and now Ryan only has two chances left. Prismatic reflection. Magic shield. Defense spirit. Magic vision. Ryan quickly waved his wand and applied 2 layers of physical armor and a layer of mental protection to himself. As well as opening up the vision to see the flow of magic power. Haha, I found you. Ryan murmured, then waved the wand in his hand, and a fireball immediately flew over. But to Ryan's surprise, the unknown creature just moved its fingers and his fireball was defused. What the hell? Ryan couldn't help but cursed. If it weren't for the size of the creature in the magic vision, Ryan even thought that some professor was chasing him. Soon, the creature fought back, an endless light escaped from the void and flew towards Ryan. Apparate! Damn it, why did you even set up an anti-apparition spell? Ryan realized that this was an attack on him.